Chapter 289. Feng Rong nodded. If she was still alive, she would be 25 years old, right? Huh. Chen Guang felt that something was amiss. Suddenly, Chen Guoli's voice came from behind Chen Guang. He had just finished his surgery. It sounded a little low. He patted Chen Guang's back. Your mom didn't spout nonsense. It's all my fault for not being able to do anything back then. What's going on? Chen Guang was baffled. Actually, there was an older sister before you. Your mom was only 19 years old, and she was born with congenital heart disease. Our family was poor, and there was no medical care. She died in less than 3 months. It's been so many years, and we can't do anything about it. In the past, everyone was poor, and the medical care was far from what it is now. It's not just your sister. Many families on the street lost their children just like that. Even if we can't figure it out, we have to. We didn't mention it all these years because we didn't want to feel sad. Chen Guoli said slowly. On the other side, Feng Rong nodded with an indescribable loneliness on her face. Chen Guoli quickly went forward to comfort her. It's been so long. You just had an operation. Don't let it affect your emotions. Feng Rong nodded. I know. I just couldn't hold it in. After that, she raised her head and looked at Chen Guang. I really like Wu Tong, and this is fate. Feng Rong explained Wu Tong's background to Chen Guoli. Chen Guoli thought it was a good idea. Although Chen Guang seemed unreliable most of the time, the couple had always trusted his judgment. Chen Guang had taken the initiative to ask someone else to be his sister, and Wu Tong was a police officer and likable. It was a good idea for them to become in-laws. Of course, to Chen Guoli, Feng Rong was the main reason. As long as his wife liked her, he would support her unconditionally. Seeing that the two of them were getting more serious, Chen Guang was helpless and could only bite the bullet. He first searched for news about Wu Tong's father, Wu Shan, and handed it over. Take a look at this. Forget it. Wu Tong and I were really just casually talking about it. This is her father. Who do you think he is? How could he become our godson so easily? The two elders read the news about Wu Shan word by word and sighed again. The thoughts of the older generation were much more worldly than those of Chen Guang. Even without Chen Guang's explanation, the two of them knew that it was impossible once they saw Wu Shan's identity. It didn't matter what the youngster said in private, but if it involved the adults, with the other party's status, he really couldn't get close to them. What a pity. Feng Rong sighed. Chen Guoli also said, yeah. What a pity. Chen Guang couldn't bear to see the two of them moaning and groaning. He got up and found a random reason to go outside to talk to Wu Tong. He thought that although his parents understood Wu Tong's family background and knew that it was impossible for them to become in-laws, Wu Tong still had to explain herself if he wanted them to stop feeling regretful over this kind of thing. Back then, she had said the joke in front of his mother, and even made his mother fall in love with him because of his biological sister, who had passed away, which he didn't know about. He couldn't just ignore it. Up until now, Chen Guang really thought that it was purely a chance encounter. Perhaps Wu Tong really felt apologetic about what happened that day, so when she saw him, she made such a prompt decision to ease their relationship. But the more Wu Tong showed that she cared about Chen Guang, the more uncomfortable Chen Guang felt. The root of the matter was because of Liuli's god-level hypnosis. She said that emotional control was better than mental control, but in the end, the repercussions were so severe. If he had known that this day would come, Chen Guang would never have agreed to emotional control. Now, he couldn't figure out how he should get along with Wu Tong. Although they were friends, she seemed to be more than friends, but not lovers. Although they had feelings between a man and a woman, it was impossible to erase the hypnosis that made her fall in love with him for a short period of time. In fact, Chen Guang secretly felt that even ordinary friendship couldn't get rid of the influence of that hypnosis. Otherwise, why would Wu Tong treat him so differently when she had interacted with so many people? Chen Guang looked up at the sky and sighed. I didn't want to be pretentious, but I had no choice but to be pretentious in this situation. He couldn't get over it, especially when Wu Tong actually took the initiative to humble herself after seeing him, which made him feel even more apologetic. On the other hand, Tang Ying thought that Wu Tong really had something important to do, so she hurriedly finished her work and returned to the dormitory. From the beginning, Wu Tong came for Chen Guang, so how could she really find anything important to tell Tang Ying? After being asked again and again, she had no choice but to beat around the bush. However, the more Wu Tong tried to be secretive, the more Tang Ying took it seriously, and the more she thought that she really had encountered some big trouble that she couldn't talk about. Tang Ying was almost driven mad by Wu Tong's taiji fist. Finally, she flipped out. I say, what are you doing? I thought you had something important, but you didn't say anything? Are you trying to suffocate me to death? Wu Tong's head was full of bumps from Tang Ying's interrogation. She regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have barged into the ward. She should have sat in her office and waited for Chen Guang to walk into the trap. Seeing her bashful look, Tang Ying said anxiously, "What is it? Just say it. It's definitely not about watching a movie or something like that. Don't try to fool me. You can't be pretending to look for me, but you're actually looking for Chen Guang, right?" As soon as the words came out of her mouth, something flashed across Tang Ying's mind. She pretended to be enlightened. "Oh yeah, didn't you ask me on the phone the other day if the patient's name was Feng Rong? You should have known about it long ago. Why do you look like you don't know about it at all today? What's going on?" Wu Tong didn't expect Tang Ying to be so quick-witted and expose her in an instant. How could she admit that she had a conflict with Chen Guang in front of her best friend and that she was here to admit defeat? She stubbornly said, "What nonsense are you talking about? It's really a coincidence. I know that Chen Guang's mother's name is Feng Rong. I bumped into him by chance when I came to your place last time. He said that he brought his mother to the hospital for a minor illness. I just said it subconsciously that day. Who would have thought that I would actually guess it correctly? Fine, fine, fine. You can say whatever you want. I can't be bothered to argue with you. I'm not as free as a third-generation heir like you. You can do whatever you want. I'm going back to work." At this point, Wu Tong still refused to admit it. She only said it was a coincidence. Tang Ying had no choice but to roll his eyes and leave. Hearing the door open, Chen Guang, who was eavesdropping on the conversation outside the dormitory, dodged and hid in the corridor next to him. With his back against the wall, Chen Guang was at a loss. Tang Ying couldn't figure it out, but Chen Guang immediately understood. Wu Tong had come to look for him on purpose today. The so-called coincidence was just her doing it on purpose. She just wanted to create an opportunity for herself to appear in front of him. Why did you do this? Chapter 290. Ah. Why are you here? While Chen Guang was still in a daze, Wu Tong appeared at the entrance of the corridor. She saw Chen Guang leaning against the wall with a desolate look on his face. As soon as their eyes met, they vaguely understood each other's thoughts. Wu Tong was frightened by the apologetic look in Chen Guang's eyes. In fact, she would rather Chen Guang still be enraged than to see him apologetic. She didn't want an apology from Chen Guang at all. She just wanted forgiveness because she knew that she was in the wrong that day. But why is he looking at me apologetically? Why is he apologetic? Of course, it's because he still wants to keep her at arm's length. I heard what you said to Sister Tang Ying just now. You don't have to be like this. Chen Guang blushed and turned his face away. He didn't want to see Wu Tong's flustered look. What? He heard everything? Wu Tong's face turned red in an instant. She thought, what should I do now? It wasn't easy for me to create this chance encounter, and now I've ruined it. How embarrassing. She couldn't help but feel helpless and her ears were burning. Seeing her like this, and thinking that she had deliberately created this chance encounter, Chen Guang's heart was almost swallowed by shame. He said, let's forget about what happened that day. I've reflected on myself. My attitude was too bad. If I had calmed down and explained it to you, things wouldn't have turned out this way. I'm sorry. Wu Tong came back to her senses and waved her hands anxiously. No, no, no. It's my fault. Qin Guang, listen to me. Wu Tong didn't want to give him a chance to speak again. She continued like a machine gun. I really didn't know what happened that day. If I had known that your mother was going to have such a big operation, I definitely wouldn't have pestered you endlessly. Yes, I know my behavior at that time seemed ridiculous. I was indeed pestering you endlessly. But I don't know why did it turn out like this? Qin Guang shook his head. Don't. You really don't have to blame yourself. Wu Tong continued to ask, so you can forgive me. Qin Guang really couldn't stand her being so humble. He felt that it was simply torturing himself. There's nothing to forgive or not. I can't explain it clearly to you. You were in that situation because of me, but I really can't explain it. Sigh, forget it. Anyway, I don't blame you, don't be like this. She doesn't look like the Wu Tong I know. So you still recognize me as your sister? He finally relented. Wu Tong heaved a sigh of relief and looked at him expectantly. Qin Guang was defeated by the look in her eyes. Even if he felt that something was wrong, he really couldn't say anything hurtful. He could only continue to nod. Yes, of course I recognize you as my sister. Although he said that, in his heart, Qin Guang was thinking that he should deal with her first. He really couldn't see her like this. Anyway, he would agree to it today and contact her less in the future. Slowly, their relationship would fade, wouldn't it? Suddenly, when he said that he recognized her as his sister, his heart inexplicably palpitated. An extremely strong sense of crisis suddenly appeared, but it flashed and then disappeared without a trace. When he came back to his senses, Qin Guang actually felt that his back was drenched in sweat at that moment. What the hell is going on? Qin Guang, who had never had such an experience, couldn't help but wonder if he was sick. The terrifying feeling of falling into a great crisis came without warning. It was extremely sudden, and the key point was that he didn't even know what the situation was. Do I have a mental illness? Intermittent mental disorder? Qin Guang was extremely puzzled. Qin Guang, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well? Wu Tong was also startled by Qin Guang's sudden change in complexion. She went over and placed her hand on Qin Guang's forehead to see if he had a fever. Qin Guang shook his head. I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm a little not used to your polite manner, haha. He laughed it off and managed to fool her. Wu Tong's mood completely turned from gloomy to sunny. It's good that you're fine. I've finally talked things through with you. I'm also free from worries. All of a sudden, I feel a lot more relaxed. Actually, I'm not used to speaking so politely with you. Ha 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 ha. She said proudly as she patted Qin Guang's shoulder. Right, I still have a while before I go on patrol. I didn't see your dad just now. Let's go back and sit for a while. Wu Tong said again as she pulled Qin Guang back. After a few steps, she stopped, turned around and asked tentatively, right, there's really nothing between you and Sun Xiaoxuan, right? Qin Guang had a headache. Nothing at the moment, but I can't say for sure in the future. Sun Xiaoxuan is a good person, and I quite like her. Wu Tong's expression changed slightly, but she quickly controlled her mood. She put her hand on Qin Guang's shoulder and put her arm around his back. You're still young, and you're not mature enough in terms of feelings. Don't casually make a decision to harm other girls. You have to be responsible for yourself, and also for others. This kind of thing, as your older sister, I have to help you check. She said righteously, but in her heart, she had already cursed herself like a pig. Wu Tong, what the hell are you thinking in your head? Qin Guang really wanted to tell her directly that her older sister's so-called checking should be replaced with stealing, right? But in the end, he didn't say it, because he knew that Wu Tong wouldn't admit it. Right, how did you practice your acting skills? I was completely fooled by you before, and I thought it was a coincidence that you came to find me. In order to prevent her from being too arrogant, Chen Guang decisively decided to expose her scars first. Unexpectedly, he underestimated Wu Tong's shamelessness. As long as he talked it out with him and returned to his normal state, Wu Tong would not be caught by his little tricks. Instead of feeling ashamed, he proudly raised his eyebrows and said, "If you study criminal psychology properly, I guarantee that you will be able to learn what I just did without a teacher." Is that so? Chen Guang thought of his disastrous acting skills again, and he was a little shocked. The two returned to the ward, and Wu Tong met with Chen Guoli again. Although Feng Rong had fallen asleep, Chen Guoli was more talkative than Chen Guang. The two chatted as if they regretted not meeting each other earlier, which made Chen Guang's eyelids twitch in fright. When Wu Tong finally left, Chen Guoli's thoughts were exactly the same as Feng Rong's, who was sleeping. Alas, it's really a pity. She's older than you by 5 years, or else it would be nice to marry her. Chen Guang rolled his eyes. If I remember correctly, Dad, you know that I'm Jiang Ye's mistress, right? That day when Sun Xiaoxuan came, you also thought it was good. Today, Wu Tong came, and you can't make her your goddaughter, but you want her to become your daughter-in-law? You should consider your son's physical condition. Right, I have a prescription here. It's the super powerful tonic soup I mentioned last time. You take a look first, and when your mother's body is more stable, I plan to cook it for you. No wonder you're not worried. You're prepared for it. On the other side, Wu Tong happily drove out of the hospital parking lot. Although she still felt that Chen Guang was a little worried, it didn't matter. Wu Tong firmly believed that the guy was not a stingy person, and it would be fine as long as she told him everything. That's right, you can't blame it all on me. You hid such a big thing in your family from me, humph. Chen Guang stayed in the hospital for about half an hour, and he planned to drive back to school. Tomorrow was the official summer vacation for the environmental science class, and the nouveau riche's treating had to be tonight. Before leaving, he glanced at the heavenly holy grail on the cup holder in the car, and for some reason, he remembered the feeling of palpitation just now. I hope nothing big happens. Chapter 291. Everyone in the class knew that Chen Guang had gone out to earn a lot of money, but no one knew how much he had earned except for his third grandson and Sun Xiaoxuan's 2 best friends. Chen Guang didn't need to tell them to keep it a secret. They all knew that Chen Guang didn't want everyone to know. 100 million was still too much for an ordinary university student. If it really got out, it wouldn't take more than half a day for the whole school to be in an uproar. University students were still students. If any of them succeeded in starting a business and earned millions a year, they would be idolized by their peers in the school, not to mention Chen Guang, who had earned nearly 200 million in a few days. No matter how the money came about, the winner takes all. He had done it, and that was his capability. Chen Guang felt that when the time came, no one knew how many juniors would be waiting outside his dorm, or trying to create all kinds of coincidental encounters to get to know him, throwing themselves into his arms one after another. No kidding, 200 million in cash, a pure diamond bachelor, a master of winning by lying down, winning at the starting line of life, and struggling for 100 years less. Thinking about that scene, it was simply awesome. To be reasonable, secretly finding a chance to pretend that he had accidentally spilled the beans was not a bad idea. Chen Guang let everyone eat and drink to their heart's content. After all, it was impossible to eat until he became poor. Almost everyone in the class came, even the group of people who had conflicts with him because of Pan Jiang and Wang Ren were here. Only Ren Yuan was missing, but no one cared about him. Chen Guang didn't mind that these people appeared at the table. They came to him humbly, so he didn't need to lower himself to their level and lower his status for no reason. Chen Guang also drank quite a bit. That day when he defeated Xiong'er's third grandson, he didn't drink to his heart's content. He only recovered a little bit of the state he had in the Sea of Moments. Today, he was the star of the show, so of course he didn't reject anyone. After 3 rounds of drinking, Chen Guang was getting a little tipsy. He remembered that he needed to top up his phone. Coincidentally, the food stall was right next to Wenxing town's largest business hall. Hence, Chen Guang greeted everyone before he walked over with a shake of his head. Sun Xiaoxuan hurriedly caught up to him and asked what he was going to do. The rich old master Guang waved his hand. The old man is going to top up his phone. All right, sit down. I'll help you recharge with PayPal. How much do you want to charge? Sun Xiaoxuan pulled him back to sit down again. Chen Guang did not even think about it. Help me top up, 1 million yuan. The 7 or 8 people sitting at the table were silent. Even Sun Xiaoxuan and Gaoya, who knew he was super rich, looked at him as if he was an idiot, let alone the others. Idiot, even if you're drunk, you shouldn't act like this, right? The people at the next table who didn't know each other started to complain first. Usually, at a time like this, there was no need for Chen Guang and the others to say anything. What would happen next was obvious. Immediately, Lin Jingwei and Bai Nyangzi, who drank the least, turned their gazes to where Xiong was sitting. F***ck. He's already gone. Brother, your behavior is super simple. Xiong the walking firecracker in human form, had already appeared in front of the people at the table. His desire to fight was 10 times stronger than that of a fighting race. Can you King say one more word? Do you believe I won't beat you to death? Xiong's breath reeked of alcohol. His face was red as he stood by the table, panting with rage. He waved his fists as he spoke, already in a pre-battle state. He was a big guy with a thick back and a bear's waist. Coupled with his half-drunk image, he was overbearing and had the ability to magnify aggro. He was the perfect choice for a main tank to pull aggro. The people in front of him were also tough. Faced with Xiong's provocation, they didn't back down at all. They slammed the table and stood up. What, you want to fight? I don't want to fight. I want to fight. Mother F***ers, you started the fight first, and now you're King arrogant? As Bramble spoke, he lifted his foot and flipped the table of these people. The sparse barbecue and beer bottles scattered all over the floor. The faces of the 4 people darkened, and one of them took a step back with a bad temper. He reached behind his back and unexpectedly pulled out a dagger with a swish. Idiot student, can't you see what's going on? Brother Scar and Eyeglasses Wu are in their cells. I, your brother, have the final say in Wenxing town. The person said and really did pull out a dagger to slash at Xiong's arm. Xiong was already a bit drunk. His reaction was a beat slower. He wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. The dagger was about to slash at his hand. A black shadow suddenly jumped out from beside him, grabbed the person's wrist, and twisted it. The person screamed and the dagger fell out of his hand. The black shadow caught the dagger with his other hand and slashed at the guy's thigh, drawing a finger-long wound as deep as a fingernail. In an instant, the brother, who was acting cool just a moment ago, screamed and held his thigh as he shrank back. This black shadow was none other than Chen Guang. Chen Guang pushed Xiong back with his right hand. You go back first. Chen Guang didn't seem to use much force, but he pushed the tall and strong Xiong back. F***ck. Find. The other 3 saw their boss was slashed, and they were about to jump up with a weird scream. Chen Guang kicked the ground with the tip of his foot, and a chair flew up. He grabbed the chair with his right hand in midair, and slammed it down on the head of the second person who jumped at him. With a loud bang, wood splinters flew everywhere, and the wooden chair was broken into pieces. In an instant, another person fell. From the time Chen Guang made his move to injuring 2 people, it only took 5 seconds. Everyone was dumbfounded for a moment. On the other side, the 20 or so boys in the environmental engineering class gathered around him. No matter what happened, since they were fighting, they had to stand together. The 4 people were suddenly surrounded, and they began to panic. The other 2 who didn't have time to make a move didn't dare to move. You. Don't mess around. You're just students, think carefully. I'm the town's. The person whose thigh was slashed by Chen Guang covered the wound with his hand, and said hurriedly. But before he finished, Chen Guang put the dagger in front of his nose. I know what you want to say. You're some kind of gang leader, right? Who the F***ck are you? Why don't you ask around and find out how Brother Scar and Glasses Wu got into the cell you were talking about? To tell you the truth, I single-handedly took down more than a dozen of them at the streetlight in front of us. I was the one who called the police. When the police came, they saw the police as their savior, you understand? Chapter 292. Although he felt that Chen Guang was spouting nonsense, the man who had his leg cut looked at Chen Guang's murderous gaze, the bloody dagger in front of his nose, and especially the murderous aura coming from Chen Guang. He had no choice but to believe it. It wasn't that Chen Guang was trying to scare him. Just as he said, when he first boarded the ship in the Sea of Transient, he was just a servant. If he dared to hide at the back when fighting, he would get his neck chopped off by his own people first. At first, he was also afraid. If he didn't drink some wine to boost his courage, how would he be able to charge forward? Before boarding the ship, he would drink from time to time and then rush forward with his machete. Relying on his ability to revive, he risked his life. Otherwise, how could he have become the second officer of the Annie in just half a year? Today, he drank some wine and got a little tipsy. The other party actually pulled out a knife without saying a word. If it wasn't for his swift actions, Xiong would probably be lying on the ground bleeding. How could Chen Guang not be angry? It was true that Xiong flipped the table first, but if it wasn't for their rude words earlier, why would Xiong go over? Of course, the so-called right or wrong wasn't important. In the pugilistic world, the most outstanding thing was to help one's kin and not reason. Therefore, Chen Guang didn't hesitate to make a move. At this moment, he had a weapon in his hand, and he saw blood. If he wasn't careful, he would completely return to the Sea of Transient, and he wanted to smell some blood. With Chen Guang pointing a knife at his nose, this brother completely panicked. He was really afraid that Chen Guang would rush to his head and thrust the knife forward. Wouldn't that stab through his nose and into his brain? Bro, I was wrong. Chen Guang looked at him expressionlessly. Wrong? I don't think you did anything wrong. After all, I hurt you quite badly. How many people do you plan to find for revenge? Sun Xiaoshuan wanted to pull Chen Guang from behind, but because Chen Guang's dagger was too close to Chen Guang, Sun Xiaoshuan was afraid that he would accidentally push Chen Guang's hand forward, so he didn't dare to exert force. Brother, don't be rash. I won't take revenge. He really didn't want to take revenge. I've been injured many times worse than this. Now that I know you've defeated Brother Scar and Eyeglasses Wu, how could I not be happy with you? By the way, I bought this saber for more than 800 yuan. I also have a scabbard here. The workmanship is quite exquisite. Take it as a greeting gift. Let's just forget about this. What if the situation is not good? A decisive coward. No explanation. Once you're scared, don't even think about trying to save face and suffer. I'm a coward to the end. If you don't like it, then come and hit me. As long as they didn't beat him to death. These Jianghu brothers of Wenqing Town had been oppressed by Brother Knife Scar and Glasses Wu for a few years, and they had their own philosophy of life. Now was the chance to train their troops for 1,000 days and use them for a single moment. Chen Guang grinned. It's good that you know what's good for you. This matter was over for the time being. But Chen Guang didn't let them leave immediately. He only asked them to call 120 and wait for the ambulance. He grabbed one of the 2 who could still move and forced him to accompany him to the business office. Watch carefully. Watch how I top up my phone. I said 1 million, so it's 1 million. This time, Sun Xiaoshuan couldn't stop them. He dragged them to the business office, where Chen Guang took out his black card and topped up the phone on the spot. Then he dragged them back. Chen Guang waved his phone. Now do you still think I'm pretending? No, no. The four of them shook their heads like a rattle drum. Get lost. Chen Guang waved his hand, and they ran away in fear. Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't help but say that he was being wasteful. By now, Chen Guang had sobered up quite a bit from the alcohol, so he explained to Sun Xiaoxuan, "Sigh, it's hard for me to explain in a few words. My phone bill is tens of thousands a month. Maybe my 1 million will be gone in less than a year. How is that possible? You have to follow the basic rules even if you want to burn your phone bill." Everyone exclaimed. Chen Guang sighed again. "Sigh, it's really hard to explain in a few words. Can I tell you that in the time we took to brag over a meal, a certain someone hiding in the cup at the dinner table had already finished talking about an entire episode of a TV series? That's right. About half an hour ago, perhaps Lioli was too engrossed in the TV series and accidentally leaked some audio, which made Chen Guang realize a tragic fact. Lioli, this woman, had actually started watching The Big Time halfway through learning about business. Hey, although that was a classic business war film, doing business in real life was different from doing business in the TV series. Moreover, even if The Big Time really had some business methods, that was a TV series that was released in 1992, alright? 24 years had passed since then, alright? The price of pork had increased by 6 times, alright? Could the business methods of the past still be used now? Chen Guang wouldn't explain it to the others, so they didn't insist on asking him. But after this incident, although the others in the class still didn't know how much money he had, just from the fact that he had recharged 1 million a month, they knew that he had really struck it rich. Quite a few girls in the class looked at Chen Guang in a different light. He was definitely a mobile human ATM. One really couldn't blame the girls for being tacky. Chen Guang's popularity in the class wasn't low to begin with. Although everyone could tell that Sun Xiaoxuan had feelings for him, the two of them weren't really a couple, after all. Even if they were married, they could still get a divorce. The two of them hadn't even confirmed their relationship, so what they were doing couldn't even be considered as poaching. It was only natural that everyone who saw it had a share. The one who struck first had the advantage, and the one who struck last had to suffer. What happened next wasn't hard to understand. One after another, the girls gathered around Chen Guang. Even Xiong, and Bai Nyangzi were pried open. As for Lin Jingwei, he was in charge of restraining Gaoya. Seeing that Chen Guang had become a hot commodity, Sun Xiaoxuan, who had been sitting opposite Chen Guang in a reserved manner, panicked. However, it was already too late for her to move to get a seat. 2 other girls had already sat down on either side of Chen Guang. "Chen Guang, ever since I entered university, I've felt that you weren't an ordinary guy. Although I don't know what you've been up to, let's have a drink. I wish you all the best. I've never drunk alcohol before. You have to drink this glass of wine." The girl sitting on the left side of Chen Guang was the first to attack. She raised her glass and moved closer to Chen Guang, pressing her full breasts against him. The 2 mountains in front of her chest clamped Chen Guang's left arm, one on the left and the other on the right. It was like a ham sausage in a hot dog bun. It launched a crazy attack on Chen Guang's rationality and character. Although this girl wasn't as cute as Sun Xiaoxuan, and her appearance couldn't be considered a stunning beauty, about 7 or 8 out of 10, her figure was really not bad. She could be considered a beauty whose back view was a 9 out of 10. Suddenly being attacked, Chen Guang suddenly froze. He thought that money was too scary. If he couldn't resist it even though they had been classmates for 3 years, those unfamiliar senior sisters and junior sisters must be no better. Chapter 293. Ding Wan. Chen Guang has drunk enough today. Don't ask him to drink anymore. Looking at how Ding Wan dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, Sun Xiaoxuan gnashed his teeth in hatred. At the same time, He inwardly cursed Ding Wan for being so unrestrained to actually make a move on Chen Guang in front of so many people. At the same time, he was envious of Ding Wan's boldness. Why don't I have such thick skin? Hu Qi, the girl sitting on the right of Chen Guang, also didn't want to be outdone. She wrapped her arms around Chen Guang from the other side and said, I want to drink too. I want to drink too. The crossfire was thick. Chen Guang began to giggle. Although he knew he should push the two away to maintain his righteous image, please let me enjoy a few more seconds. It feels so good, bang. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was sitting across from Chen Guang, slammed the table. He was furious. Ding Wan and Hu Qi were stunned at first, but they immediately formed a united front. Class president, what do you mean? Ding Wan still didn't let go of Chen Guang. Hu Qi also pressed down harder and harder. 2B asterisk cheese. Sun Xiaoxuan cursed in his heart. Aren't you two a little too much? In the past, when Chen Guang was poor, he said behind his back that people who study while driving sports cars would become useless if they didn't go to class. Now that he's rich, he's trying to get close to us. Isn't that too much? Seeing that Sun Xiaoxuan was about to lose, Gaoye came over. She was much fiercer than the mild-mannered Sun Xiaoxuan. She pointed at the two girls and yelled. In fact, she was already being polite. Gaoye, what nonsense are you talking about? When did we say anything about Chen Guang behind his back? Don't slander us. Besides, we're Chen Guang's classmates. Why can't he drink with us? Haven't we all known each other for 3 years? Are you saying that the class president is in charge of everything? That we can control who we want to be close to? Hu Qi's fighting ability was not for nothing. Unlike Sun Xiaoxuan's elegance, she had changed at least 4 or 5 boyfriends during her 3 years in university. She was very familiar with this kind of jealousy tactic. Ding Wan and Hu Qi were about the same. Neither of them were easy to deal with. If they weren't experienced, they wouldn't have the guts to put their ideas into action. Ding Wan rolled her eyes. That's right. Hu Qi is right. You think you're so great just because you're the class monitor? Gaoye, forget it. Stop it. Sun Xiaoxuan pulled Gaoye back. He didn't want her to continue talking in front of others. Bah. Don't try to use your status as the class leader to embarrass me. This was not a scholarship, nor was it an outstanding student selection. You can't just give in to everything. If you talk nonsense again, I'll tear your mouths apart. Gaoye did not want to be outdone. Sun Xiaoxuan was so anxious that his face turned red, but he could not stop her. The development of the situation was really unexpected. Chen Guang didn't even have time to react before it became like this. He could only blame the girls for being too strong. In just 10 seconds, they had come up with so many tricks. He still hadn't come back to his senses. Truth be told, Chen Guang didn't have any intentions of doing anything with the girls in his class. At this moment, he just drank a little too much, and the benefits that came to him came too suddenly, causing him to lose his composure. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was sitting across from him, slammed the table. It looked like he was getting mad at the two girls, but in fact, he was trying to scare away Chen Guang's drunkenness. His drunkenness had subsided, and his mind was sober. How could he not know which was more important? All right. Stop talking. It's fate that we're classmates. Let's not get into a fight over such a small matter. I drank a little too much today, and my brain short-circuited. I went too far with my jokes. Too far. Chen Guang hurriedly struggled out of Ding Wan and Hu Qi's attacks, and then stood next to Sun Xiaoxuan. He didn't know how to deal with the situation, so he could only smile apologetically at Ding Wan and Hu Qi. We're classmates, but we can't make jokes like this again. Otherwise, if your boyfriends find out, I'll be in serious trouble. He just said it casually to help himself out. He didn't expect that Ding Wan and Hu Qi's expressions would change, and they looked a little embarrassed. Oh my God. You two really have boyfriends. Do your boyfriends know that you two are so cool? Do you think I'll be hacked to death by you guys? I can't take the blame for this. It's just a joke, just a joke. Don't think that I'm really interested in you. Ding Wan quickly waved her hands to disassociate herself, and Hu Qi quickly laughed. After being pointed out by Chen Guang, the others roughly understood what he meant. Especially when Chen Guang sat next to Sun Xiaoxuan, his attitude was even more obvious. Seeing this, the others could only secretly regret missing the opportunity. Of course, just based on looks, temperament, and personality, no girl in the class could really challenge Sun Xiaoxuan. Sun Xiaoxuan was happy, but he didn't say it out loud. Galia took the opportunity to pull Sun Xiaoxuan aside. You see? He's actually still on your side. Why don't you strike while the iron is hot and talk things out with him? That way, there won't be so many vixens who keep thinking about him. Let me tell you, it's easy for a girl to pursue a guy, especially Chen Guang. He hasn't had a girlfriend in his 3 years in university, and I bet he's been thirsty for a long time. If there really is a vixen who doesn't play by the rules and only wants to get on first, you'll regret it in the future. Sun Xiaoxuan looked at Chen Guang, who didn't dare to drink any more and only ate his barbecue. He hesitated and said, I'm a little scared. What are you scared of? Galia had an attitude that said, if you can do it, then do it. If you don't, then you're not a good girl. Although Sun Xiaoxuan was a little tempted, she still said timidly, I'm afraid he'll have scruples and won't say yes. Galia pushed her, don't joke around. I don't believe a normal man would say no to you. Go. Ding Wan and Hu Qi, both of whom have boyfriends, are still pestering him. Why are you scared? Sun Xiaoxuan shook her head slightly. I'm different from them. Different? What's different? Galia frowned. She didn't quite understand what Sun Xiaoxuan meant. After thinking about it for a while, she suddenly understood. Don't tell me you're still a virgin? Oh my God. Sun Xiaoxuan blushed. What's so surprising about that? Galia nodded. That's right. You've never been in a relationship. Sigh, this is really troublesome. Men's minds were very strange. If a girl like Ding Wan, who kept changing boyfriends, went to hook up with him, he might happily eat her up as if she was a dish delivered to his doorstep. But if the one who was sent to him was a virgin, he would have all kinds of misgivings in his heart. Let's not talk about those born bad guys, but Chen Guang is definitely not that kind of person. Sun Xiaoxuan nodded. That's what I'm afraid of. Oh, from your tone, you don't seem to be one anymore? Galia raised her eyebrows proudly. I just got promoted a few days ago. Lin Jingwei? Of course. Who else could it be? That's simple. Galia nodded. That's simple. Chapter 294. Did he promise to marry you? Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't help but envy Galia. Galia shook her head. I haven't thought about the future yet. I might not even be willing to marry him. Alright, let's not think about it anymore. Today is a rare opportunity, and we'll have to go home soon. We'll have to wait for 2 months to see each other again. If you don't make things clear now, I'm guessing he'll get us a sister-in-law that we won't even know after the summer vacation. Galia continued, by the way, don't tell him about being a virgin yet. You can test his attitude first. If he really cares, I have a very ruthless way. What? Galia's face turned fierce, her eyes glinting. You ruined the cucumber first. Don't lie to him that you're not a virgin anymore. Wait until he's satisfied, then find a chance to make things clear. If you're afraid he'll be unhappy, keep him in the dark. To tell you the truth, I've never had that thing. When I was a kid, I rode a bicycle and lost it. I was afraid that Lin Jingwei wouldn't believe me, but it turns out he doesn't care at all. Hiss. Sun Xiaoxuan gasped. Galia's plan was so cunning. Go. Be brave and pursue your happiness. Don't be afraid of failure. Failure is the mother of success. Think about how pitiful and persistent the boys who wrote you love letters were. Borrow some of their perseverance and courage for yourself. Gaoye pushed Sun Xiaoxuan, pushing her back again. Sun Xiaoxuan blushed and slowly moved towards Chen Guang. She was very concerned about what Gaoye had said. She was going back to Wuming City for the summer vacation and wouldn't be by his side for as long as 2 months. She couldn't predict what would happen during those 2 months. She was afraid that he would be seduced by someone else. In the past, Sun Xiaoxuan wouldn't have been so worried. But recently, Chen Guang seemed to have a lot of luck with women. Not to mention his nemesis Wenwen, teacher Zhua, the lady who accompanied him to Xiangjiang, and the beautiful officer Wu who acted strangely at the hotel that night. No matter who it was, they were all terrible potential competitors. Finally, Sun Xiaoxuan stood behind Chen Guang. Lin Jingwei, who was chatting with Chen Guang, was the first to notice Sun Xiaoxuan's ghost-like figure. He turned around to see Sun Xiaoxuan's flushed face under the night light, then looked at Ye, who was winking at him from afar. Lin Jingwei poked Chen Guang's waist, signaling him to turn around. Chen Guang sat on the stool and turned his head. He still didn't know that something good was about to happen. He only tore off a large piece of roasted and fragrant pork tenderloin from the barbecue skewer and said with a smile, "Class monitor son, why aren't you coming over to eat something? The vegetarian dishes that you girls love to eat are almost all gone. Chen Guang, you, come here for a moment." Sun Xiaoxuan's voice was as low as a mosquito's. She used her fingers to pinch the shoulder of Chen Guang's t-shirt and pulled him up. Strange, Chen Guang muttered in his heart. He picked up his cup and followed Sun Xiaoxuan to a corner of the food stall. He drank tea as he walked. The barbecue tasted a little salty today, and his mouth was dry. Looking at Sun Xiaoxuan's back as she carefully walked in front of him, it seemed that she was so nervous that her legs were trembling. Chen Guang couldn't help but think, what on earth does she want? He pondered in his heart, is she going to confess to me directly? This doesn't feel right. It's not that I'm not mentally prepared, but shouldn't we guys take the initiative to talk to girls about this kind of thing? Class monitor son, you're undoubtedly the prettiest girl in our class, and the undisputed #1 beauty in our academy. How could the old man, damn, this sentence sounds familiar. I don't know where I've heard it so many times. Forget it, if she really has this intention, as a man, I can't let a woman suffer too much. Why don't I just say it first? Just as Chen Guang was letting his imagination run wild, an emotionless mechanical and electronic voice suddenly rang out in his head. It sounded like Lioli. It was just like the mission description of the heavenly Holy Grail that he heard in the racing god training field, which had shrunk the most. It was enunciated word by word, like the voice of a Google girl, but it was spoken clearly. This voice came so abruptly. Although it wasn't loud, the content was deafening. In just a moment, he broke out in a cold sweat. He wasn't prepared at all, and there were no signs in advance. No, maybe that throbbing feeling in the hospital in the afternoon could be considered a sign. The punishment realm had arrived. Countdown to the activation of the punishment realm. 10. 9. 8. F***CK. She's even playing a countdown. Is she forcing a sense of urgency? Chen Guang looked down at the cup in his hand and secretly clenched his teeth. Damn it. Come on. I'm not afraid of you. Anyway, I'm AF** King Savior, I won't die. Chen Guang stood still and concentrated, waiting for the heavenly Holy Grail to suck him into the realm of the cup. Unlike in the past, this time he was notified in advance. Perhaps he would face the punishment of the power of fate as soon as he entered. Although he didn't know what kind of enemy he would encounter, it was always good to be prepared in advance. 4. 3. 2. In front of him, Sun Xiaoxuan quietly looked back and found that Chen Guang was standing behind him. She gathered her courage and said, "Come on, what are you doing standing there? Qin Guang didn't answer her, because the countdown had reached the last second. 1. 0. The punishment realm. Activate. Qin Guang's right hand squeezed the cup so hard that his knuckles turned white. His left hand clenched into a fist, and the expression on his face suddenly became a little ferocious. He slightly bowed and made a posture of being ready for battle. Having no time to answer Sun Xiaoxuan, he slowly closed his eyes and waited to be sucked in. After a long time, about 30 seconds, when his tense muscles began to ache, there was still no movement. Huh? What's going on? Why haven't I been pulled in yet? Qin Guang opened his eyes slightly and looked at his current posture. It was a little too awkward. He was squatting in a horse stance with a painful expression on his face. His muscles were tight, and even the veins on his arms were bulging. 2 drops of sweat slowly rolled down from the edge of his temples. A cold wind blew past, and his temples felt cold. That wasn't all. With his strange posture and ferocious expression, many people focused their attention on him. Sun Xiaoxuan walked back in a panic. Qin Guang, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with your stomach? Wait, this is an illusion, right? I must have been pulled into the realm of the cup. This is an illusion, right? Do you have to make it real? I'm used to seeing mosaic scenery, and you actually made an illusion that is more real than a holographic projection. The investment is too big. No wonder it's the punishment realm derived from the realm of fate. That's how awesome it is. Look at Sun Xiaoxuan in front of me. Her expression is so vivid, and her skin is so delicate. Compared to the previous realm of the cup, this is simply a work of conscience. It's too real. Even the worried look in her eyes is so real. 6666666. I really can't let my guard down. Qin Guang decided to continue tensing his nerves and muscles, ready to explode at any time. This Sun Xiaoxuan in front of me is definitely the first enemy I have to face. Humph, you want to use my care for her to deceive me? Then, with a whoosh, he would transform into a monster and swallow me? Dream on. I'm a veteran, okay? Chapter 295. If you're not feeling well, go back and sit down first. We'll pay the bill and go to the hospital right away. I'll hold the cup for you, Sun Xiaoxuan, who was standing in front of Qin Guang, spoke again. Huh? Cup. Qin Guang slowly turned his head stiffly and looked at the cup in his hand. Then the question was, if I was dragged into the world within a cup, why is this F*King cup still in my hand? Cup within a cup. Double illusion? Don't be too awesome, okay? That's completely unreasonable, right? Idiot, you weren't sucked into the cup. Why are you still standing there? Liuli spoke in his mind. This time, it was really Liuli's voice. That kind of domineering, cool, and arrogant tone with a hint of contempt for mortals could not be imitated by anyone. What a scam. I'm really still in the real world. King created such a domineering countdown of 10 seconds, but in the end, nothing happened. At this moment, Qin Guang felt like he was the person in charge of a space center. The whole country was watching the countdown of the satellite launch live on TV, but when the countdown ended and the satellite took off, there was no movement at all. It was so embarrassing to find out that the fuel had been forgotten. Brother Guang, are you constipated? Bai Nyangzi's vicious ridicule came at the right time, because Qin Guang's horse stance in front of everyone was too funny. It was so embarrassing, and he really wanted to strangle someone to save his face. What should he do in this situation? I'm waiting online, it's urgent. At this moment, Qin Guang even felt like vomiting blood, especially Sun Xiaoxuan, who held onto Qin Guang's shoulder worriedly and asked, "Is your stomach really uncomfortable? How about I go to the pharmacy over there and buy some laxatives?" Sun Xiaoxuan had completely forgotten about the confession. Qin Guang slowly stood up in extreme embarrassment, held his waist, and shook his head. "I'm fine, I'm just a little uncomfortable. I'll be fine after sitting down. At this moment, a uniformed police officer suddenly walked in from outside the food stall. He looked a little anxious. Everyone, leave the room as soon as possible. Immediately. Immediately. This officer had saved Qin Guang's life. The moment he appeared, everyone's attention was on him. Qin Guang also turned to look at him. He had a vague impression of him. He seemed to have seen him before when Wu Tong brought him to the Wenxing police station. This person also remembered Qin Guang and strode over. At first, he seemed to want to say something, but after thinking for a while, he only said, "Brothers, you guys should leave quickly. Don't wander outside now. We have to make sure that there is no one on the street in 10 minutes. What's wrong?" Qin Guang asked. "I can't tell you, I don't want to cause panic. Anyway, I just want to pack up quickly. Really, I'm not joking with you. I have to warn the others. Boss. You have 5 minutes. If there are still any customers sitting outside when I come back in 5 minutes, I will arrest them." After saying that, the police officer left and jogged to another hot pot restaurant across the street. Everyone looked at other places on the street. Indeed, on the same street, there were many police officers going around notifying people, and people were already leaving the street in a panic. What's going on? Qin Guang's mind was a mess. He subconsciously thought that this might have something to do with the punishment realm. At that moment, an electronic voice sounded in his mind again. Punishment realm mission announcement, save sister in danger. What? Does that mean that the punishment realm this time is not a mission in the cup, but directly happening in the real world? In just a few seconds, there were fewer and fewer people on the street. Some people even took advantage of the situation and rushed into the internet cafe. The strong sense of danger was getting stronger and stronger. Qin Guang's mind was still a mess. He didn't understand why the punishment realm was not in the cup, but in the real world. But he knew that the Holy Grail was not joking. He counted out 1,000 yuan from his wallet and threw it to the stall owner. Then, he turned to Sun Xiaoxuan and said, "I don't know what's going on, but it seems like it's too late to go back to school. The police wouldn't make such a big joke for no reason. Everyone, go to the internet cafe and leave the street first." The two returned to the table of the class. Everyone was discussing what the police was trying to say. They couldn't make up their minds. Qin Guang took a deep breath. "Everyone, go to the internet cafe now. I'll pay for all the internet fees tonight. If we can't leave, we'll play all night in the internet cafe. Don't worry about what's going on. Just listen to the police. Hurry up, we won't get a chance if we're late." It turned out that the last sentence he said was useful. After exams, it was time to play games and relax. The 30 or so people in the class teamed up to play games. It was a spectacular and fun scene. Regardless of gender, everyone rushed to the internet cafe. Walking at the back of the crowd, Qin Guang's mind was still confused. "Sister? Don't joke around. I'm an only child." "No, I only have a sister who died 3 months ago. Also, why would the realm of punishment of the heavenly Holy Grail appear in the real world? This doesn't make sense, okay? Could it be that the realm in the cup is the real world? That's ridiculous. I don't exist alone in the real world. I'm standing on Earth. Earth is so big. There are so many people on Earth. It's fine if it's just Earth. Outside of Earth is the endless universe. There's no boundary between the two. Strictly speaking, Earth and any stardust in any corner of the universe are considered to exist in the same space. You're telling me this is your realm in the cup? The endless universe is your realm in the cup? Are you King kidding me? This isn't the sea of moments where you can see your brother's hand. Forget it. I can't care so much. The most important thing now is to figure out what the realm of punishment is." As he walked up the stairs, Qin Guang went through the entire process of the realm of punishment appearing in his mind. First, the heavenly Holy Grail suddenly told him that the realm of punishment had been activated. However, he wasn't pulled into the realm in the cup. Instead, he was acting cute. Then, the police officer from the Wenxing town branch appeared. He only asked everyone to leave the streets as soon as possible. He didn't say what happened. Then, the heavenly Holy Grail immediately notified the mission target of the realm of punishment. It was as if the police officer's notification had triggered some condition. Damn it. What's the connection between the two? No, could it be that the heavenly Holy Grail's sister is Wutong? I'm not related to her by blood. I just acknowledged it verbally. She's in danger? What's this? The strongest person in history? I don't believe it. Something big must have happened outside. Otherwise, with the usual style of the Chinese police, stability is more important than anything else. If the situation wasn't so serious that it couldn't be any worse, it would be impossible for such a martial law to happen. Even if the current emperor were to go on patrol, it wouldn't be possible. Even if the emperor were to go on patrol, he would at least start sealing the roads 5 to 6 hours in advance. The more Qin Guang thought about it, the more confused he became and the more uneasy he felt. Liuli. Come out right now. What's going on? Damn Liuli. She dropped the ball at the crucial moment and pretended to be offline. After saying that he wasn't pulled into the realm in the cup, she didn't do anything. She didn't even come out to explain it to him. After waiting for a few seconds, Liuli still didn't say anything. Don't F***king joke with me. What's going on? Qin Guang didn't know where he got the courage from. Perhaps the uneasiness in his heart was too strong. He actually roared in his mind. Chapter 296. Azure finally agreed reluctantly. It's nothing important. I think you should just go to the internet cafe and play a few games of Dota. After a few hours, the punishment realm will naturally pass. I don't have to do anything. I can pass the punishment realm just lying down. Qin Guang raised his eyebrows and said to Azure in his mind. Liuli continued, strictly speaking, that's the case, and I hope so too. Actually, I didn't think that the life realm would be so big. Things are getting a little out of control, so I suggest you pretend that you don't know anything. There won't be any punishment for failing the mission. I won't die. Azure said with even more certainty, there won't be any punishment for you. Just play the game in peace and don't worry about this. After all, even if you complete this mission, there doesn't seem to be any benefits. This Empress really doesn't suggest you get involved. The more casual Liuli sounded, the less confident Qin Guang felt in his heart. He had already guessed that something would happen. Now that Azure said this, how could he agree with it? What's going on? Don't F***king play dumb with me. Azure disappeared. There was no movement. She had completely disappeared. Picking up the cup, Qin Guang wanted to throw it out, but he held back in the end. Forget it. This woman is unreliable. I'll ask her myself. Qin Guang pushed Sun Xiaoxuan and the others into the internet cafe and turned to walk outside. Sun Xiaoxuan, you guys go in first. I'll go ask what's going on. Sun Xiaoxuan wanted to follow him out in a hurry. Her woman's intuition told her that she couldn't let Qin Guang go just like that. Qin Guang swung his hand, not letting Sun Xiaoxuan grab him. He said anxiously, go in. Didn't you hear what the police said? You're the class monitor. You have to look after the whole class. Don't let anything happen to them. But you can't leave. I have to look after you too. Sun Xiaoxuan said loudly. Qin Guang shook his head. I can't explain it to you, but I really have something important to ask. Don't worry about me, I am not an ordinary person. After saying that, he was afraid that Sun Xiaoxuan would be worried that he would run out again, so he steeled his heart and moved closer to her. He put his arms around her shoulders and whispered in her ear, be good and listen to me. Don't make trouble for me. Quickly go inside. I'll be fine. Promise me that none of you will leave the internet cafe before I call you, okay? As he spoke, Chen Guang pushed Sun Xiaoxuan into the internet cafe and pulled the manager over. Chen Guang and Wenwen had beaten up countless people in front of this internet cafe. He was a famous person, and the employee recognized him at a glance. Brother, what's the matter? Chen Guang took out 2,000 yuan from his pocket and threw it to the internet cafe manager. This is all the cash I have. These are all my classmates. I'll pay for everyone's internet fees. If it's not enough, I'll transfer the money to you. Now, lock the door. Don't do any other business today. The internet cafe manager didn't want to agree. Brother, this isn't good. Chen Guang glared at him. Do you believe that I'll bring my boss to tear down your internet cafe? Of course, the internet cafe manager knew that the boss he was talking about was the super strong female T-Rex. He groaned in his heart, lowered his head, and locked the door firmly. Okay. You have the bigger fist, so you have the final say. Chen Guang said goodbye to Sun Xiaoxuan, Lin Jingwei, and the others, who were looking at him through the fence, and turned to leave. No one could do anything about him. Although they felt that it was not right for him to go out alone, they couldn't stop him. He had just taken 2 steps when 2 crisp popping sounds came from a distance about 2 miles away. It was very abrupt. It sounded like firecrackers, but brighter. Chen Guang frowned. It's not a festival today. There's no reason for people to set off firecrackers at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Just as he was thinking about this, the police officers who were doing the last bit of security down there trembled and gathered together. Chen Guang's heart skipped a beat. Was that a gunshot? Sun Xiaoxuan, who was behind the fence of the internet cafe, asked loudly, Chen Guang, what was that sound? Chen Guang smiled and waved his hand indifferently. I just saw someone set off fireworks over there. It's pretty, but it's not a problem. You guys go in first. I'll go down and ask the police what's going on. If there's nothing else, I'll come back up. But no matter what, none of you are allowed to come out. Do you hear me? With that, Chen Guang planned to run down the stairs and rush toward the group of police officers. He had just taken a step when the electronic voice of the heavenly Holy Grail suddenly popped up in his head. It almost made Chen Guang trip and roll down the stairs. Mission description. If the mission fails or the mission is abandoned, then the sister dies, and the savior loses nothing. Then, there was no more. Chen Guang held on to the stairs and waited for a while. In the end, the heavenly Holy Grail really was a man of few words. Chen Guang fiercely hammered the cup in his bag as he hurriedly walked down to the police officers who were planning to leave. What the F***CK? Not only did this prompt not contain any substantial information, but it also made his balls hurt even more. No matter what, there was only one thing for sure, and that was that someone would really die. If the heavenly Holy Grail said that someone would die, then it definitely wouldn't be a joke. The words spoken by this emotionless mechanical voice made it hard to believe even if one didn't want to. There was a high chance that it was a gunshot, and the police officers were solemnly waiting downstairs. It must be something big. At this moment, Chen Guang already understood that the person involved in this punishment realm was indeed Wu Tong. Moreover, if it wasn't handled well, Wu Tong would really die. So this was the meaning of the saying, you will lose as much as you gain. If one manipulated fate, one would receive a backlash from fate. If one defied fate and forcefully saved a family member's life, then the price would be losing another family member's life. This was the punishment of the realm of life. But why was it Wu Tong? Chen Guang thought to himself. She wasn't my sister at all. She was just casually claiming to be my sister. No. Chen Guang recalled the foreboding of his heart palpitations in the afternoon. At that time, he seemed to have gone along with Wu Tong's words and agreed that she was his sister. Previously, Azure had said that the punishment realm could descend at any time. This meant that it had already been prepared, like a sword of Damocles hanging above his head. Once he did something to trigger the opportunity, it would ruthlessly slash down. She was implicated by him. Motherf asterisk cur. B asterisk starred. D asterisk amenit. What should I do? According to the usual behavior of the realm within a cup, it couldn't possibly not give me a chance to succeed at all, right? The prompt just now said that Wu Tong would only die if the mission failed or if she gave up on the mission. Then what if the mission succeeded? She definitely wouldn't have to die. Wait a minute. You guys wait a minute. Chen Guang's mind was in a mess, but he didn't slow down. He caught up with the group of police officers who were planning to leave and shouted from behind. He had to get to the bottom of the matter. Chapter 297. Several police officers were suddenly stopped. They were a little unhappy at first. After all, their time was very tight. But when they looked back and found that it was Chen Guang, especially when 3 of them knew Chen Guang, things became easier. Brother-in-law, what's the matter? The policeman who had greeted Chen Guang at the food stall turned around and answered Chen Guang's words. He said to the others, "You guys go first. I'll run to catch up." Just now in front of Chen Guang, he was still restrained. Now that there was no outsider, it was easy to call him brother-in-law. Chen Guang was too lazy to argue with him about the title. He just asked in a hurry, "Buddy, I think it's a big deal. Can you tell me what happened?" As he spoke, Chen Guang pointed in the direction where he heard the sound of gunshots just now. The man's face changed at first. He hesitated and didn't want to say it, but in the end, the identity of Chen Guang's brother-in-law prevailed. He swallowed his saliva and said, "I'll tell you about it, brother-in-law. Please don't disclose it again. It's also because Captain Wu just rushed over there. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't tell you. It's really troublesome." Chen Guang said anxiously, "What's wrong? Is it really a gunshot?" The man said fiercely, "I haven't received any notice from the bureau, but I think it's very likely to be a gunshot. Something happened at the airport about half an hour ago." He pointed in the direction of the airport. Chen Guang knew that Shuangyue County, where Wenxing Town was located, was also the location of Wujing City Airport. The airport was about 5 or 6 kilometers northwest of Wenxing Town. What happened? The internationally wanted criminal was recognized when he landed at the airport. Originally, he was to be arrested on the spot and even executed by shooting. Unexpectedly, there was someone outside the airport who helped them break through the blockade. And then? At this moment, Chen Guang had a bad premonition in his heart. At that time, there was a heavy exchange of fire at the airport. One of them was killed, and one of our own was killed. There are about a dozen criminals left in 2 cars. One escaped to the west, and the other is heading towards Wenxing Town. I wasn't sure about the ones heading west, but the ones heading our way were blocked by the SWAT team that reacted in time. They temporarily retreated to the number 5 steel works over there and are now trapped. Damn, this group of grandsons are all crazy. Their firepower is even fiercer than our special police, and their marksmanship is also very accurate. No one dares to go up. Currently, the military was still in the process of coordinating, and they might directly consider transferring military helicopters over. They are quite well trained, so they must be here to do something big. Fortunately, we discovered them first, or God knows how big of a mess they would have made. Chen Guang knew that the old Wusan steel works that this guy was talking about was called Wujing City 3rd Steel Rolling Mill. It had been prosperous for a period of time in the early years. It was quite large and had thousands of employees. But later, because of the overall concentration of resources in the national steel industry, the high transportation costs, and because of backward technology and other reasons, this large state-owned steel rolling mill that was built in a non-mining area slowly declined. A few years ago, it went bankrupt and was liquidated, leaving only a large abandoned factory to raise a flock of crows as a memorial to its former glory. When he was a freshman, the whole class of environmental sciences went there together, and had a special barbecue spring outing in the old factory. Chen Guang began to imagine the scene of several vicious criminals using the abandoned factory as a stronghold to deal with the police. It had to be said that the abandoned steel factory with a solid structure, good ventilation, and large windows everywhere, but only 2 stairs up and down were quite suitable for those desperados to stubbornly resist. When he thought that Wu Tong was also there, he became more and more panicked, and hurriedly said, "Then you just said that Wu Tong also went there?" Criminals with firepower even fiercer than the SWAT team shouldn't be something that patrol officers like you can get involved in, right? What is she doing there? Can you call her back? He didn't expect this guy to become calm. As expected of my brother-in-law, you really care about our Wu team. Don't worry, the innermost layer of the encirclement is the work of the SWAT team. None of the local police officers who don't have weapons can go there. Someone like me, who has the establishment but is famous for being fat and having low professional ability, was sent to guard the nearby streets with a few of my brothers to prevent trouble before it happens. Only the Wu team and a dozen other elites from our bureau were called over. Their main task is not to exchange fire with the other party, but to form the second layer of encirclement. They are basically useless, just to make up the numbers. Really? Chen Guang's heart slightly relaxed. The guy nodded again. Of course, why would I lie to you? In another 10 minutes, the troops will arrive, and it will cause a lot of noise. Also, those international criminals are really amazing, and they are very famous internationally. I heard that one of them is a renegade instructor of some kind of special force. Us small police officers are really no match for them, so it's not worth losing our lives. They don't have hostages? Chen Guang asked again. The guy saw that his colleagues were already far away, so he waved his hand and said, "No," the airport reacted quickly, and didn't give them a chance. I don't have much time today, so I won't talk to you anymore. I'll be leaving first. Next time you and Wu team have a wedding, remember to call me. After he finished speaking, he dragged his half-fat body and ran forward like a wisp of smoke. Although he said that he was a weakling, in fact, he was a fatty with nimble movements. On the other side, when Chen Guang heard that Wu Tong didn't have to directly go to the front line to exchange fire with the other party, he felt slightly relieved, but then he thought that something was wrong. Since Wu Tong didn't have to go close, why did the Heavenly Holy Grail's notification say that Wu Tong would die if the mission failed? Just as he was thinking about this, the Heavenly Holy Grail's electronic voice sounded again. Mission description added. Mission target sister's fate has been successfully changed, she is in danger, and has entered the stage of defying fate. If the savior doesn't take any action, sister will definitely die. F***CK. I knew it wasn't that simple. Chen Guang was so angry that he stomped his feet. Although he didn't know what happened to Wu Tong, it definitely wasn't something good. Forget it, let's go to that broken factory first. Thus, Chen Guang immediately made his way to the third steel mill. Fortunately, he and his roommates would often take a stroll around Wenqing town on their bicycles. Occasionally, they'd go to the neighboring White Town to have some White Town pig intestine noodles. Although they couldn't be considered as having a thorough understanding of Wenqing town's surroundings, they definitely knew more than half of it. He plunged into the forest by the side of the road, knowing that there was a dirt road that led to the steel mill more than 2 miles away. Idiot. I suggest you don't go. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Liuli, who had been pretending to disappear, couldn't hold it in anymore. Chen Guang shook his head. How can I not go? The mission description said that if I don't go, she will definitely die. In other words, no matter what the power of fate does, how it punishes me, how it controls Wu Tong's fate, only I can save her. Right? Don't lie to me. Absolutely. You can't lie to me. Liuli was silent for a few seconds, which was rare, before she said faintly, "That's true. Things started because of you. You plucked the string of fate and saved your mother's life, so there must be a relative of yours in danger." Chapter 298. But she's not my biological sister, Chen Guang said in a low voice as he ran. Shrugging her shoulders in Chen Guang's heart, Liuli continued, even if that's the case, the punishment realm wouldn't have looked for Wu Tong, and there's a higher chance for it to happen to your father. But coincidentally, she met your father today and chatted with him for a long time, which caused them to be tainted by karma. Regardless of your family or yourself, everyone has acknowledged her as your sister. Even if she's just a god sister and not a biological sister, she can't get away from this karma. In addition, I speculate that it might be because she's engaged in a high-risk business, so the Bell of Destiny looked for her to save some energy. All living beings in this world are controlled by fate. No matter what her original fate is, since she's targeted by the realm of destiny, her fate is to meet with an unexpected calamity today. Even if she doesn't die in the hands of that wanted criminal, she'll definitely die before midnight tonight. Maybe she gets electrocuted, maybe she gets in a car accident, or even the chandelier above her head falls while she's sleeping on the bed. Of course, I don't think she can survive this calamity. Chen Guang was furious. F***CK. How the F***CK can I save her? Isn't she destined to fail the mission from the beginning? Liuli sighed again. I really don't want to tell you. After all, the realm and cup is related to your real world. It's not in the heavenly Holy Grail. If something unexpected happens, I might not be able to protect you with my current strength. You should know that this is not the realm in the cup. You don't have an immortal body, and you don't have a chance to resurrect with full health. Chen Guang's breath stagnated and he stopped walking. No matter whether I'm in the real world or not, isn't it still considered the realm and cup? This is the realm and cup, but it's also your real world. The realm of destiny is different from the ordinary realm and cup. Your real world is even more different. When the two are entangled, it's already beyond my control. I can't protect you, and the heavenly Holy Grail can't protect you. That's why I'm determined not to let you go. Women, there are plenty of fish in the sea. It's fine if one dies, but where can't we find beautiful women? Really, you should go back and pretend that you don't know anything. Have a good sleep. After tomorrow, you will still be Chen Guang. You can continue to live your life. Just treat Wu Tong as someone who has never appeared in your life. Maybe you can even thank her for saving your father's life. Isn't that great? What kind of joke is this? How the hell am I supposed to do that? Chen Guang finally couldn't hold back and roared. He ran forward again. I was the one who implicated him in this mess. Now that he's going to die, you want me to stand by and watch? I'm the master of the heavenly Holy Grail. Just now, I mentioned the fate reversal stage. Does that mean that I, the master of the Holy Grail, can forcefully reverse fate? Only I can save her, right? This time, Liuli finally stopped playing dumb. Indeed, the only one who can break the game is you. Karma moves because of you, and it can only be restored because of you. After the realm of fate and your real world fused together, the two powers intertwined. Your entire world is filled with the power of the realm of fate. No one can escape or go against it. Although this power isn't strong and can't even be sensed, the so-called fate only needs to borrow power. It's just like the theory of the butterfly effect in your world. However, as the master of the Holy Grail, you hold the heavenly Holy Grail. You're not in the 9 realms. With the power of the heavenly Holy Grail supporting you, you're completely different from others. I can borrow the power of fate in the realm of fate, but I can't reverse it. Only you, Chen Guang, can go against fate with your own power. You can reverse fate and save Wu Tong's life. This is also the punishment of the realm of fate. If you want to escape punishment, you can only defeat the power of fate that wants to take Wu Tong's life. You must do it. Listening to Liuli talk about the mysteries of the entire punishment realm, Chen Guang only felt endless shock. He raised his head to look at the vast starry sky, feeling that it was inconceivable. He stretched out his hands slightly, as if he could feel an invisible power on his fingertips. You can feel it, right? This is the power of the heavenly Holy Grail. When the punishment realm was activated, it had already enveloped your entire universe. In other places, it's so thin that it can be completely ignored. It's only slightly dense around you, so only you can reverse fate. But I really don't want you to go, because you might really die. If you die, everything will be over. After saying that, Lioli paused. I'm not joking with you, really. I will die. Chen Guang's running footsteps stopped again. He was only a mile away from the steel mill. He could faintly see the figures of the police patrolling in front of him. At this moment, these people seemed to be in a bit of a panic. They weren't in their normal state of waiting for a hare to come to them. Something really happened. But what should I do? Chen Guang lowered his head to look at his body. He had a sports bag with the heavenly holy grail inside. He touched his trouser pocket. That's right, there was also a sharp dagger that he snatched from that hooligan. Other than that, there was nothing else. Those heavily armed police and special forces couldn't do anything. Although he had rich experience in killing with cold weapons in the Sea of Transient and could be considered a cold-blooded executioner, he hadn't even killed a chicken in the real world. He was just a bit more ruthless when fighting. How could he be compared to those terrifying international fugitives? Of course not. Bang! Bang! Gunshots rang out again, and there was another short exchange of gunfire. Listening to the ear-piercing gunshots and the slightly panicked noises of the police in front of him. Something happened. If I turn a blind eye and do nothing, she will definitely die. Those police and special forces in front of him, as well as the incoming special forces and armed helicopters, are all useless. No one can save her. Perhaps these fugitives will die without a burial place, but Wu Tong's life is destined to be lost. The only one who can save her is me. Chen Guang really wanted to tell himself loudly that if anything really happened to Wu Tong, it was all his fault. If he were to back down today, he would have to live in regret for the rest of his life. He understood the logic, but he couldn't take a step forward. Especially when Lu Li kept repeating that sentence in his ear, it was like a death warrant that was destroying his will. You can't go. You will die. You will really die. 10 minutes before the incident happened, Wu Tong was driving alone in the town for her routine patrol. She even saw Chen Guang and his gang eating and drinking at a food stall. However, she was working, there were quite a lot of people there, so she didn't get out of the car to greet Chen Guang. She only planned to give him a call after she was done with her patrol today and tell him that she saw him being corrupt outside today. She wanted him to treat her to a meal later. This guy seems to be living quite comfortably. Chapter 299. After complaining about Chen Guang's corruption, she had received an order to drive there. On the way, Chief Ding had repeatedly reminded her that she, as the branch captain of the branch, could only guard the perimeter with other colleagues, and that she should never be greedy for credit. The criminals inside were extremely vicious, and ordinary police officers couldn't deal with them. Although Wu Tong was tough, she understood. About 3 minutes ago, Wu Tong had driven the police car to the front, followed by 2 other police cars from the Wenxing branch. In front of her was the second perimeter formed by the police, and about 200 meters ahead were dozens of SWAT officers hiding behind various bunkers. Less than 20 meters ahead of the bunkers was the abandoned 2-story factory building. Seeing that they were getting closer to the second perimeter, Wu Tong started to get nervous. She let go of the accelerator to step on the brake, and her right hand was already on the gun at her waist. However, her car didn't slow down. When she stepped on the brake, it felt like she was stepping on air, and there was no feedback force at all. The brake was broken. Seeing that the colleagues in front of the second perimeter were getting closer and closer, Wu Tong couldn't control the car at all. She could only stick her head out of the window and shout, "Excuse me, excuse me. This broken car's brake is broken." The colleagues in front of the perimeter were all dumbfounded. At such a critical moment, "You said your brake was broken." Helpless, the colleagues in the second perimeter could only jump to the side, barely dodging the car. Wu Tong's police car crossed the second perimeter and headed in the direction of the SWAT officers. The brake was completely broken, and the car was at least 60 kilometers per hour. Wu Tong's head was about to explode, and she twisted the steering wheel hard. Then, her body tilted, and her head hit the B-pillar. When she came back to her senses, she was in a daze. What? The entire steering wheel fell off. Wu Tong stared blankly at the steering wheel in her hands, and the steering wheel that was supposed to be connected to it was now only supported by a section of steel pipe. She felt like she was about to collapse. If she had known earlier, the broken car that was bought in the police station in the 90s should have been replaced a long time ago. Other than the horn, it sounded everywhere, and something would happen sooner or later. That unlucky Chief Ding didn't listen, and insisted on saving the money to become an excellent unit. First, the brakes were broken, and now the steering wheel was gone. More than 100 meters in front of him was the territory of several internationally wanted criminals. Obviously, he was going to crash into them. This broken car really broke down at the right time. He killed a person. Screw you to death. Wu Tong wasn't the only one who thought this way. The hundreds of police officers and special forces surrounding them were also cursing in their hearts. Stop the car. Some people shouted it out, while others roared in their hearts, but it was useless. Nothing could stop Wu Tong's car from passing the cover of the SWAT team. The SWAT team could even clearly see Wu Tong's pained and desperate eyes as she sat in the driver's seat. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the atmosphere was tense, and an intense exchange of fire could break out at any time. The robbers who were quietly hiding by the window of the factory immediately saw the audacious police car and fired without hesitation. The windshield of Wu Tong's police car was instantly shot into a spider web. She reacted quickly, and when she knew it was impossible, she curled up her body and lay down, barely escaping. The robbers' bullets swept across the driver's seat, but didn't hit her. Therefore, under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, Wu Tong and her police car first knocked away the wooden boxes that the robbers had piled up in front of the factory, then slightly slowed down before crashing into a support pillar that was more than 50 centimeters in diameter in the middle of the factory, and finally came to a stop. Which branch's idiot is this? Damn it. Idiot. I'm going to kill him. Isn't he sending himself to be a hostage? The captain of the special forces in charge of temporary command was also on the verge of breaking down. Standing next to him was Chief Ding from the Wenqing branch. He already knew who the unlucky idiot was from the other two police officers in the other cars. Chief Ding's legs were about to turn into soaked fried dough sticks. Captain Gu, that's Wu Tong in that car, Department Chief Wu's daughter. Chief Ge's eyes widened as if he had heard the most terrifying thing in the world. This veteran soldier, who had at least 3 bullet holes in his body, couldn't hold it in anymore. He took a deep breath and finally said, Motherf ****. The word Motherf **** probably accurately summed up the feelings of all the police officers here at this time. As for the international felons who were guarding the perimeter, they were the complete opposite of the police officers outside. Thank God. They really thought they were dead. Based on the style of Huaxia, the two sides were in a deadlock, and the real heavy firepower of the other side must have already been mobilized. They originally thought that they and the others would definitely die under the rocket launched by the helicopter. They didn't expect God to bless them and send them such a big gift. The guardian god of Samaria must have heard my prayers. One of them, who looked like a Middle Eastern man, was about to kneel down and thank God. 3 black muzzles were pointed at Wu Tong's police car. A Chinese man got slightly closer and said loudly, "If the person inside is still alive, squeak. Otherwise, I'll count to 3, and then I'll throw a grenade through your car window." 3. 2. Wu Tong looked at her rather shabby gun awkwardly and decisively hid behind the car door. Squeak. The atmosphere was a little tense. She was afraid that the other side would open fire at the slightest disagreement. If that happened, she would really be dead. It was better to act cute first and see if they could mediate. Sure enough, the Chinese man grinned. A female comrade? Not bad, not bad. Raise your hands and crawl out of the car door yourself. Don't try to open the door, or I'll shoot you into a sieve. Wu Tong did as she was told. When she stuck her head out and saw the 3 black muzzles, she completely lost all thoughts of struggling. She just thought, I'm really going to die because of Chief Ding's broken car this time. Even if I directly hit the factory wall, it'd be good. First, the brakes broke, then the steering wheel fell off, and then it accurately plunged into the factory door like an automatic grenade. Even if I hit the factory wall, it'd be good. Why am I so unlucky? I'm probably going to be the unluckiest police officer in history, right? If I die like this today, will I still have a chance to be honored as a martyr? I'll be the shame of the 5 Beijing police force, right? Wu Tong would never have guessed that her encounter was not really a coincidence. Instead, the power of fate had taken control of her life at this critical moment. She, who was supposed to be safely outside the second warning line, had plunged headfirst into a den of thieves. At this time, Chen Guang was making his last struggle in the distant woods. Because of the sudden change caused by Wu Tong, the police officers who were originally patrolling outside the second warning line gradually gathered inside. Looking at the expressions of the leaders in front, they knew that something big had happened. Of course, it was a big deal. The only daughter of the head of the public security system of Sichuan province was kidnapped by vicious criminals. More importantly, the head was now far less than 50 years old. It was self-evident what it meant. Chapter 300. The situation was already very serious, and now that the descendant of such a big shot was involved, the police officers on the scene were on the verge of breaking down. If Wu Tong died here, it would be useless even if the criminals inside died 10,000 times. Even if all the criminals hiding in the factory were killed and this serious incident that was close to a terrorist attack was perfectly resolved, the fate that awaited the people in charge here today would probably not be good. There were many stories about Wu Shan that were almost legendary and bloody, but everyone knew that Wu Tong was his only family. If he lost Wu Tong as well, who knew how crazy this man who had the potential to step into the central command would become? Captain Gu and Chief Ding, the 2 insiders, were well aware of this. The others were only slightly panicking, but the 2 of them only felt great fear in their hearts. The 2 of them turned their heads to look at the abandoned factory in the distance. For a moment, they felt as if the air had become a heavy burden that pressed down on their shoulders. It was so heavy that they could not breathe. Listen up, people outside. We want a helicopter. It's filled with oil. I'll give you 15 minutes, or you'll lose this female comrade forever. Wu Tong was pushed to the window. The other party did not torture her, but her hands were firmly bound. However, when the Chinese criminal shouted, he pointed a gun at her temple, not giving her any chance to escape. She could either die or stand here obediently as the most eye-catching hostage. The purpose of the other party pushing Wu Tong out was to tell the people outside that their hostage was still alive and not to try to fight to the death. Then, before Chief Ding and Captain Gu could answer, Wu Tong was pulled back again and thrown into a corner, unable to move. Not only were her hands tied, but her feet were also tightly bound. She could only take half a step when she walked. It was obvious that this group of well-trained criminals had no intention of negotiating with the police. This was someone else's territory. Other than the hostage, everything else was out of control. Once they showed any signs of being willing to negotiate, it would be easy to fall into the other party's trap. As for whether the other party was willing to accept her conditions, they would just have to observe for another 2 minutes. The Middle Eastern man stood not far in front of Wu Tong, looking at her with Wu Tong's gun in his hand. He looked Wu Tong up and down with great interest. From the moment they captured her, she had been very cooperative. He thought to himself that perhaps he should try to take it a step further. She would not resist anyway, right? Mr. Shurjiu, are all Chinese women this beautiful? Even a random policewoman is so charming. Although the Middle Easterners were impulsive, they were experienced. They knew that any move they made at this time had to be approved by the temporary leader among them. The Chinese man known as Shi Jiao was the one who had grabbed Wu Tong earlier. He put on a straight face and said, "Zayad, you're wrong. There might not even be one woman as beautiful as her in 100,000 people. But I advise you not to touch her. You don't understand Chinese women. She was a police officer and knew how to deal with us when she was a hostage, so she was very cooperative. But if you plan to treat her like the women in your hometown, I bet $1 million that there's a 90% chance that she'll fight you to the death." Zayad was in disbelief and expressed his incomprehension. Could it be that to Chinese women, that kind of thing is more important than their lives? She would also be afraid of death, right? Shi Jiao glared at him. Even if there's only a 50% chance, you can't act rashly. Right now, she's our only hope of survival. Put away your thoughts and leave this place alive. You can still sleep with hundreds or even thousands of women. Okay, this is your territory. I'll listen to you. Zayad shrugged indifferently. Although he didn't think much of it, he changed his mind. Although Wu Tong wasn't very proficient in English, she could roughly understand 70% of the conversation between the two men. She still didn't move, but the expression in her eyes became even colder. Zayad suddenly nodded and said to himself, "Shi Jiao is right. You'll fight me to the death." Wu Tong was shocked. She didn't expect him to be so observant. This middle-aged man with an unshaven beard was not stupid at all. Outside, Bureau Chief Ding and Captain Gu had immediately reported Wu Tong's kidnapping to Wu Shan. The instructions they received were very simple: do your best to stabilize the criminal's emotions and wait for him to arrive. In addition, Wu Shan was already on his way here and would arrive in about 20 minutes. Although Captain Gu, Bureau Chief Ding, and even the director of Xuanyue County who had just arrived felt that it would be useless for Wu Shan to arrive, he was still the head of the department. His daughter was being held hostage, so his orders were unquestionable. However, the other party only gave him 15 minutes, so they needed to negotiate. The negotiation only lasted for 30 seconds before it broke down. The negotiator had just stated that due to the urgency of the situation, the helicopter would need at least half an hour to arrive when the loudspeaker in his hand was shot through the window. From the moment the other party extended the muzzle and took aim to accurately shoot the loudspeaker, it took less than 3 seconds. His loudspeaker had only poked out a small part of it from the bunker. The terrifying sniper was so strong that it made people despair. The special police sniper lying in ambush in the distance didn't even have time to turn his gun around. From the beginning to the end, the military literacy displayed by the other party clearly told everyone that it was impossible to rescue the hostage. Have you really decided? Even if you really die, you still want to go? Liuli was still making one last effort to dissuade Chen Guang. However, at this moment, Chen Guang's footsteps had finally become firm. He gently pushed aside the bushes and moved forward bit by bit like a cat. Hearing Liuli's words, Chen Guang didn't stop moving and replied, "Yes, I've decided. I want to go, I must go. I know my current behavior is very stupid. Before today, I didn't expect myself to be so great, but now, I really want to be great once in a while. Aren't you afraid of death? If I die, so be it. There are always some things that people have to do in their lives. If it wasn't because of me, with my current ability, I wouldn't do something that I'm not confident in. But now, I can't just stand by and do nothing. This is the karma that I created, my punishment realm, so of course, only I can destroy it with my own hands. Even you wouldn't want your savior to be someone who's afraid of death, right?" After a pause, Chen Guang continued, "I don't know what's waiting for me in front of me. I don't even know what kind of fate I'll have to face after getting involved with you and the heavenly Holy Grail. But you told me from the beginning that if I fail the test of the real realm in the cup, I'll die. If I don't have the courage to be fearless, how can I face the true dangers that might appear in the 3,000 worlds? It can't be that every test world is as gentle as the heavenly Holy Grail, right? Even in the Sea of Time, I've already died 95 times. Although I managed to escape danger in the end, I'm only 5 times away from dying, right? Since I've already let the heavenly Holy Grail recognize me as its master and changed my fate, I'm no longer an ordinary person. If I don't have the courage to be decisive and always think that nothing will go wrong, how can I accompany you to the end of the 3,000 worlds? Liuli was silent for a while. All right, I'll help you. Qin Guang fiercely clenched the dagger in his hand. Hiding in the forest, he looked at the factory in the distance and grinned. I've been waiting for you to say this for a long time. Even if I know that I'm going to die, as long as you can help me, I'll be able to grasp a slim chance of survival. This is the fate that I, Qin Guang, have chosen. Without regrets, there's no turning back. Imperceptibly, a thick smell of blood gradually gushed out from his body, but then suddenly disappeared. Qin Guang recalled the 20 years he spent in the Sea of Time. It was as if he once again felt the enemy's blood splashing on his face. That scalding feeling made his blood gradually warm up. The opponent is a well-trained bandit, but I'm also the all-powerful second officer of the Sea of Time. His blood, which had gradually cooled down in real life, began to burn again. Chapter 301. Liuli's help wasn't limited to words alone. About a minute later, when Qin Guang was about to leave the cover of the bushes and expose himself to the eyes of the patrolling police officers, Liuli said, "There's a small river 50 meters to the right from here. Follow the river for about 200 meters, and there's a circular water pipe that's half the height of a person hidden behind the water plants. You can go in directly from there." Liuli's voice sounded extremely tired. "I'm so tired. Just now, this Empress used her divine power to scan this entire area. The little stock that I saved up from your statue of Ao Ta with great difficulty has been used up again. You're such a useless prodigal. Now, clear your mind and wait for me to enlighten you. Hurry up and don't dawdle." "What prodigal?" "You're the prodigal woman." Before Qin Guang could say anything, he could only complain in his heart. Then, he felt as if someone had forcefully stuffed something into his brain. After pondering for a while, he was so shocked that his mouth opened wide. What appeared in his mind was a 3D three-dimensional image of the abandoned steel mill in front of him. From the structure of the house to the distribution of the underground drainage pipes, everything was there. It was very similar to the structural modeling commonly used in architecture. After pondering for a while, his mind felt as if he was sitting in front of a computer and looking at a 3D model. This model even had the function of dragging and automatically zooming in and out. What the heck is this 3D printing scanner? It's really too useful. Alright, that's all I can do to help you. I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving first. I hope you're still alive when I wake up." After Liuli finished speaking, she completely disappeared without a trace. Qin Guang squeezed the heavenly Holy Grail in his sports bag. He thought to himself that she had indeed helped a lot. Although he only had a dagger at the moment, he could control the situation of the house in front of him just like when he was running corpses in CS in the past. Especially the complicated underground drainage pipe structure, it was his only breakthrough point. Unlike other production enterprises, the wastewater of the steel mill was mainly cooling water. It had a lot of water, but it had low pollution. Therefore, in the early days, the steel mills almost didn't consider the separation of rainwater and sewage. The rainwater ditch and the wastewater ditch were all put together after coming out from each factory. The huge pipe that Liuli mentioned was the drainage outlet of the entire rolling mill. Behind this outlet was the complicated underground pipe network structure of the entire rolling mill. At this time, it was impossible for Qin Guang to swagger over to the factory in front of the police. People would only think that he was crazy. Therefore, sneaking into the drainage pipe without anyone noticing was his only choice. He crouched down and crawled in the circular drainage pipe. He seemed to be in an awkward situation. However, Qin Guang himself was rejoicing. He thanked the heavens that this broken factory had been out of production for many years. If there was water in this unlucky pipe, that would be awesome. Just as he was thinking about this, he pressed his claws on something sticky. This was definitely not dog poop, definitely not dog poop. Of course not. Why the F***ck was there a pile of sh**t here? Is this a sign from the heavens that I'm going to be lucky today? What was worse was that Chen Guang didn't know what the situation outside was like. He didn't know how much time he had left, so he could only desperately crawl forward. Thanks to the powerful LED flash of the popcorn 6p, it was really useful at this time. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how many times he would hit his head in this dark drainage pipe. That pile of sh**t just now. That was an auspicious sign from the gods, okay? However, Chen Guang didn't dare to fully release the light from the flash. Instead, he pressed a finger on the light bead, letting only some light pass through his finger. Right now, his only chance of winning was to catch the other party off guard and think of a way to save them in a flash. Once he alerted the enemy in advance, it meant that he would really have to rely on this broken dagger to fight against several armed bandits head-on. The key was that he couldn't save Wu Tong in that way. He would only put himself in danger for no reason. Thinking about the situation, I can probably last for 1 second. Once I make a move, I must hit the target in one shot. There won't be a second chance. On the other hand, there were 8 minutes left before the 15-minute limit given by Shizhou. The military's assault helicopter was approaching quickly. They had delayed for a few minutes to dismantle the weapons and equipment on it. They didn't expect that the assault helicopter, which was supposed to deal a fatal blow to the bandits, would become a negotiation tool. Several leaders explained the situation to the troops behind Wu Shan's back. Although the other side was furious, they didn't hesitate to agree to the proposal of temporarily saving Wu Tong's life even if they had to give up an assault helicopter and let the international criminals go free. The person in charge of the military knew Wu Shan better and could roughly guess his plan. This pillar of the nation probably wanted to use himself as a hostage in exchange for Wu Tong. Many years ago, because of his stubbornness and persistence, he lost his wife and son. Now, he was as stubborn as ever, but he was definitely not willing to lose his only family, his daughter. Therefore, even if it was just a simple order from him to stall for 20 minutes, it wasn't hard to guess his true intentions. Currently, Wu Tong was the one being held hostage, so the situation wasn't irreparable. To this country, Wu Tong wasn't indispensable. However, if it was Wu Shan, the impact of this would be like an earthquake, and it would be immeasurable. Perhaps Wu Shan wasn't indispensable to the entire country, but to the interest groups that had invested heavily in him for so many years, Wu Shan's life couldn't be lost. Therefore, they would rather give up the helicopter and let Wu Tong go. Even though they knew that this wouldn't save Wu Tong from danger because the other party wouldn't let go of the hostage easily. Instead, it would cause Wu Tong to be taken away for good. However, they still did it without hesitation. Captain Gu, Bureau Chief Ding, and the others wanted to use the helicopter to temporarily save Wu Tong's life. The people from the military agreed so readily, but their thoughts were deeper. Wu Tong's life was not important, and they only needed to save Wu Shan's life. Even though they knew Wu Shan would fly into a rage after this, someone in his position would understand the importance of this sooner or later. Of course, they had a good reason. The other party had given them a time difference of only 15 minutes. If they didn't give up the helicopter with both hands, their daughter would die before they arrived. Then, they could explain it to Wu Shan, who would fly into a rage after this. Unknowingly, Wu Tong's life was given up. Squatting on the ground, Wu Tong peeked at the bandits in the factory from time to time. Looking at the 2 light spots flying in from afar, she had mixed feelings. She knew the helicopter was coming. Chapter 302. It had only been 10 minutes since the other party proposed the conditions, and the helicopter had already arrived, which meant that the commander outside had chosen to compromise because of her. This meant that this group of vicious bandits could really get a helicopter full of fuel. With these well-trained people, the possibility of them successfully escaping from this place was instantly magnified to 90%. But even so, she still had no hope of getting out of danger. They had to guard against the time bomb installed on the helicopter, and they also had to guard against all kinds of means that could bring the helicopter down. Therefore, there was no doubt that she would also be taken on the helicopter. By then, this group of bandits would really be like birds flying in the sky and fish in the sea. The root of all this was because she was extremely unlucky to plunge into the factory, turning an encirclement that should have been in the bag into a rescue with a slim chance of success. Wu Tong thought to herself, no matter how it happened, whether it was luck or not, the fault was ultimately caused by her. Now that the situation has come to this, should I take the initiative to take the responsibility? If I had slowed down earlier and found out that there was a problem with the car's brakes, I wouldn't have crashed into the factory, right? These people are so highly trained in military affairs. If they escape and lurk in the country, how much harm will they cause? These thoughts were churning in Wu Tong's mind. She kind of wanted to give up. If I take the initiative to die, as long as I die, the people outside will no longer have any scruples, and this group of people won't be able to escape, right? But if I have a choice, I really don't want to die. I still have a lot of things to do, and I haven't avenged my mother and brother. As a police officer, the belief of protecting the country and punishing evil was entangled in her heart with the desire to survive of an ordinary person. At the same time, Chen Guang quietly lay in the drainage ditch on the first floor of the factory. Through the cement grill on the drainage ditch, he could even see the back of the white man standing not far away, and he could clearly hear these people's whispered conversation. In order to get here within 4 minutes, Chen Guang had already gone all out. When he was about to reach the bottom of the factory, he turned off his phone and fell into darkness. He could only rely on the 3D map left by Lioli in his mind to determine the direction to move forward. Unfortunately, although the 3D map was good, a human sense of distance was not that of a machine. Even though he knew that there was a turn ahead, he could not accurately grasp the distance in the pitch-black darkness. Every time he swerved through the pipes and ditches, he would either end up crashing into a corner, or he would be lucky enough to touch the wall first. In addition, because of the long years of disrepair, the cement pipe was not orderly, and some parts even collapsed. As Chen Guang climbed, he would bump into a sharp corner that suddenly protruded from the top of the pipe. It was all Lioli's fault for disconnecting again. Otherwise, with her following and commanding them, they wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. However, Chen Guang also knew that he could not be too harsh on Lioli. He was glad that he had managed to become a great perfection racer god training ground the last time he raced and got himself a statue of half an alto. Lioli's godly power was able to support him for today's squandering. Otherwise, if he did not have this detailed 3D image in his mind, he really would not have had any chance of winning. In the beginning, the pipe was still fine. It was at least half a person's height, and it was very fast. Then, he entered the rain-polluted ditch in the factory, and the situation began to change. It became a square ditch that was less than 60 centimeters wide and about 50 centimeters high, but at least he could crawl forward. When he approached the last half of the factory, it was completely miserable. It became a ditch that was less than 50 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters high. With Chen Guang's body size, he could only move forward like a caterpillar while lying flat. Fortunately, this small section was less than 15 meters away, and he had to move at least 2 minutes for these 15 meters. Fortunately, he managed to get here in time, even if his head was badly bruised. Chen Guang remembered a sentence he often said when he played games. "My head is very hard." Touching his forehead, which was full of bumps that almost looked like the Buddha, his eyes were filled with tears. It did not feel very hard. The ditch fence that Chen Guang was hiding in was located in a corner. There was no light at all, but he could quietly lift his head and look out through the gap. 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 bandits on the first floor of the factory. Maybe there were people guarding the second floor, but Chen Guang did not know the number. These bandits looked like they were super good at fighting. Logically speaking, he wanted to just lie in the sewer and pretend to be a zombie. In another corner, he only saw Wu Tong squatting in the corner. Her hands and feet were tied, but fortunately, her clothes and hair were not messed up. It seemed that she had not suffered any real pain so far. At that moment, the white man standing in front of him turned around. Chen Guang quickly pulled his head back, cold sweat dripping down his back. This group of bandits was really not simple. He had only looked at them from behind, and this guy actually felt a faint sense of vigilance. The white man turned around and frowned slightly. He whispered to himself, "What the hell? What's going on?" He slightly tightened his grip on the AAC Honey Badger assault rifle and took 2 steps toward the corner where the sewer fence was, intending to see what was going on. Hearing the sound of the man's leather boots on the ground getting closer and closer, Chen Guang quickly twisted his body and retreated into the depths of the ditch. If this bastard opened the fence, he would be able to see him lying there, unable to move. He was dead. If that really happened, could he tell him a joke and let him go? For example, could he reluctantly stretch out his right hand and say, "Hey"? It was already difficult to crawl forward in this narrow sewer, and it was even more difficult to shrink back now. He could not move too much. The sound of leather boots was getting closer and closer, as if they were right in front of him. Chen Guang broke out in a cold sweat. "Wash the motor." At that moment, the sound of the helicopter's propellers was getting closer. The bandits who had been hiding behind cover finally knew that the helicopter was coming. "It seems that we picked up an amazing hostage. I gave them 15 minutes, and the helicopter arrived in just 10 minutes. Sergio laughed heartily as he walked toward the corner where the white man was hiding. He then instructed, "Velen, go upstairs and take a look. I'll get them to park the helicopter behind this house. We need a safe escape route." The Velen that Sergio was calling out to was the white man who was about to head to the corner. When he heard that the helicopter had arrived, Velen heaved a sigh of relief. He tossed aside the indistinct feeling of discomfort and replied, "No problem." He then walked up the stairs. Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. The old man was, after all, a man who was truly blessed by the gods. At the critical moment, he had managed to escape by the skin of his teeth. Logically speaking, my poisonous healer is a little powerful. That brother named Velen had already shifted to where I was, but I was still able to heal him back. Old immortal Su Dong's magic power was boundless. Full. Chapter 303. Apart from that, he also heard the conversation between the two of them clearly and instantly figured out what was going on. He knew that the helicopter was the product of the negotiation between the two parties, and he instantly deduced the safe escape route that the bandits wanted. He also deduced that the other party would definitely use that route to head to the open space behind the factory where the helicopter could land. As an outsider, it was impossible for him to get any help from the police or the military. In fact, they didn't even know that there was a daring person on their side who had quietly sneaked a few meters away from the bandits. With just a dagger, if he wanted to rescue someone from the hands of the armed bandits, he would have to use an unorthodox method. He would have to play his cards out of the box and use his understanding of the terrain to the fullest. The 3D model that Lu Li had forcefully stuffed into his head flashed through his mind in an instant. Combined with the opponent's movements that he had speculated, a crazy plan that had a high chance of success rose from the bottom of his heart. His chance had appeared. Sometimes, people's wisdom was forced out of them. Chen Guang praised himself as he retreated into the depths of the gutter. "I'm really smart." He was almost fascinated by his ingenious idea. "Why am I so king talented? My brilliance can light up the night sky." On the other side, Wu Shan was roaring angrily into the phone, "Didn't I tell you to wait for me? What's the deal with the helicopter?" Wu Shan was furious at the decision made by the temporary commanders on this side without authorization. However, they bit the bullet and insisted on the other party's conditions. In turn, they pushed the order to send the helicopter to the military. Even though everyone knew that handing over the helicopter might not be enough to save Wu Tong, and that the other party might not dare to kill Wu Tong on the spot if the time was delayed for more than 15 minutes, no one dared to take the risk. The military's quick response seemed to be deliberately timed to send the group of bandits and Wu Tong away before Wu Shan arrived, not giving Wu Shan a chance to walk right into the trap. Little girl. Get up. Thanks to you, we can leave this place. Even if I'm an atheist, I have to thank the gods for sending such a perfect hostage like you. Shijiao walked in front of Wu Tong and tried to pull her up. Wu Tong stood up with her back against the pillar. She spat at Shijiao and hit his face. She decided to provoke the man. She gave up. Wu Tong felt that if the other party really left safely in the helicopter, the fate that awaited her would definitely not be good. Instead of that, she might as well be a glorious martyr. Unexpectedly, when Shijiao's face was covered with spit, he merely smiled coldly and wiped the spit off his face. He was not angry at all. Are you seeking death? Little girl, calm down, don't be impulsive. Once we're safe, we'll let you go. I promise I won't touch a single hair on your body. Because of you, the military directly sent an armed helicopter. You don't have to explain yourself, I can guess that your identity is really not ordinary. I'm not stupid. I know the consequences of killing you. We didn't come to Huaxia to become enemies with the Huaxia military. We have other work to do. It's all because of that idiot Velen's mistake that things ended up like this. Let us leave peacefully and everyone will be happy. Your death won't do us any good. I know better than you how terrifying an enraged Huaxia army is. Wu Tong's eyes lit up. Really? Sometimes, human nature was really fragile. Even if she was seeking death just a moment ago, when the hope of survival was placed in front of her, Wu Tong's heart immediately loosened. Shijiao smiled again. Of course. You can only choose to believe me, right? Put away your senseless sense of justice and cooperate. This will be good for everyone. We really don't want to go against the Huaxia government. We don't intend to start a massacre on this great land. Everything that happened today was just a bad accident. Wu Tong subconsciously felt that Shijiao was lying to her. Even though he looked sincere, every word he said seemed like a lie. Wu Tong understood the logic, but there was a tiny possibility that she hoped that what he said was true. She had imagined herself as a police officer becoming a martyr in a certain operation countless times. However, the sudden death in a confrontation and the anxiety she felt after becoming a hostage were completely different. Once again, she decided to compromise. She would not give up hope of survival until the very last moment. After being pushed to the front of the crowd, Wu Tong staggered forward. Sigh, she used to think that she was an indomitable tough woman, but now she was no different from an ordinary woman. How she wished that a godlike man would descend from the sky and save her from this group of demons. After thinking about it, could anyone in this world save her unscathed in such a situation? Kill 7 such terrifying bandits in an instant, and not give them a chance to shoot me? Was that even possible? The Huaxia man named Shijiao was paying full attention to the situation around him. The other 6 bandits of different skin colors were also on high alert. A total of 7 people were all hunched over. Their bodies were stretched taut like cheetahs ready to pounce. The helicopter had completely stopped over there, and the soldiers on the plane had long been evacuated. At the request of Shijiao and the others, all the police officers and soldiers moved to the front of the abandoned factory, completely abandoning the encirclement. On the surface, it looked like a broad road from here all the way to the helicopter. The hope of escaping was close at hand. Shijiao and the others did not want any accidents to happen, so they were still very cautious. At this time, they were in a small alley that extended from the back door of the abandoned factory. On one side of the alley was another row of houses in the L-shaped factory. However, only half of the brick wall had collapsed. On the other side was a wall that had also collapsed. Using the buildings on both sides as cover, this group of internationally notorious bandits quickly moved forward. The helicopter was quietly parked in the open space about 20 meters in front of the alley. In the eyes of Shurjiu and the others, she was as beautiful as a goddess who had taken off her clothes and was waiting to be touched. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the exit of the alley, Shurjiu raised his hand and motioned for everyone to stop. Then he said, "Zayad, go ahead and have a look. Use your sensitive nose to sniff for the smell of snipers." The Middle Eastern man who was called rolled his eyes. "Shurjiu, when we get out of here, I will bite you to death with my bull terrier." Although he said that, he still obeyed the order and scurried forward with quick steps. Chapter 304. The 20-meter distance from the alley entrance to the helicopter was the last hurdle for the 7 bandits. Although they had hostages in their hands, World 9, who was well aware of the strength of the Chinese military, knew that with so much time having passed, the other party could easily mobilize more than 20 top snipers to hide in the dark. If the 7 of them suddenly appeared in the open area, it was entirely possible that they would be killed at the same time. The Chinese soldiers, who had won the International Special Forces tournament for several years in a row, could really do it. At that time, they would become the 7 beautiful flowers of blood embellished on the Chinese military's achievements. Therefore, it was better to be safe than sorry. He let Zayad check out the situation first. He had an extraordinarily keen intuition when it came to snipers lurking in the dark. Zayad's movements were soft and agile. Like a civet, he darted through the alleyway, silent yet extremely fast. He elegantly twisted his body, brushing past the collapsed bricks and cement pillars. His toes gently touched the cement cover of a sewer catchment well, and he continued moving forward. When he landed, the cement cover shook a little, but it did not affect the balance of a top sniper like him. When he reached the entrance of the alley, Zayad looked around for a long time before quickly running back. This time, however, when he passed through the sewer catchment well, his clothes were grazed by a steel bar protruding from the cement pillar, causing a tear to appear. Zayad stood on the cement cover and glared fiercely at the steel bar before stomping his feet. "Damn it! How dare you break my prince's signature combat uniform? When I come back, I will make that stupid steel bar of yours into a pendant around my neck." World 9 and the others, guys, there is no sniper in front. I swear by my 15 years as an instructor. Also, guess what I saw? Waiting for us outside is a Z-10. I can't believe my eyes. Zayad's words made everyone excited and they could not help but fall into ecstasy. World 9 also found it hard to believe. "Don't joke around. We just want a helicopter. There's no need for them to send us such good equipment, right?" Zayad laughed. "God knows what's going on. Maybe they can only mobilize this type of armed helicopter within 15 minutes. On the other side, Wushan was clutching his cell phone tightly. The voice of the man on the other end of the phone made him furious, but there was nothing he could do. He said, "Wushan, we gave away a Z-10. Wushan roared angrily, "You know who he is. If you insist on letting them go, you will be court-martialed." The person on the other side of the phone grunted. "I understand. That's why I hid 16 remote-controlled bombs on the helicopter. My finger has been on the switch all this time. I'm just waiting for you to say the word. Either press the button, or I'll be court-martialed." If they were allowed to leave safely, Wu Tong's chances of survival might be 10%. "You and I are brothers. I'm willing to go to court for this 10% chance of my niece surviving." Wu Shan held his breath. He didn't expect the other party to be so determined. I don't know. I don't know what to do." Wu Shan had never hesitated when making a decision in his life, but at this moment, he couldn't make up his mind. "I know Wu Tong is important to you, but you are more important to us. We will not allow you to throw away your life. No matter how angry you are, it will be meaningless. You just need to tell me your decision. I will respect all your decisions. I will bear all your mistakes for you. The voice on the other side of the phone was still cold, but it was suppressing a great determination. Wu Shan leaned his head against the window and looked in the direction of Lao Wu's third steel factory from afar. He knew that as long as he said the word, the night sky would soon burst into a blood-red firework that could pierce through the darkness. Any of the remote-controlled bombs could destroy the helicopter in an instant. The power of 16 bombs exploding at the same time could destroy everything, turning the helicopter into molten iron in an instant. But when the time came, his daughter would also be on the helicopter. After the helicopter takes off, press the button. When Wu Shan said this, it seemed as if he had used up all the strength in his body. Then, he hung up the phone with a snap, clutched his throat, and punched himself in the chest again and again. Bastard. You bunch of bastards. Why do you have to do this to me? Why do you have to torture me like this? Why don't you give me a chance? Wait another 5 minutes, even if it's just 5 minutes. Wu Shan finally couldn't hold it in anymore and sobbed. He wanted so badly to exchange himself for Wu Tong, but things couldn't always go according to his wishes. For the power in his hands, he had lost too much. Now, he even had to give up the last bit of hope. Just as the person on the phone said, even if the other party really took Wu Tong away safely, when they were out of danger, what awaited his daughter was almost certain death. Wu Tong's chance of survival was at most 10%. He really couldn't let the person on the other side of the phone go to the military court for this slim chance. The price was too heavy. When he really weighed the pros and cons of this matter in his heart, he knew why Wu Tong still refused to forgive him. So, his daughter's life can also be weighed? Shouldn't I do my best even if there's only a 1 in a million chance? Am I really going to calculate that ridiculous percentage? I really am a pathetic politician. Wu Tong was right, I really don't deserve to have a family. I don't deserve to be a husband, much less a father. I'm just a pathetic tool, a tool controlled by my own and others' desire for power. Why don't you let me die? Bastard. All bastards. I'm also a bastard. Wu Shan slammed his head against the bulletproof glass, the loud sound almost causing the driver in front to lose control. Wu Shan himself was also dizzy from the impact. At this time, there was another dizzy person who was cursing someone in his head for being a bastard. This person was none other than Master Guang, who was as quick-witted as Zhuge Liang. Zhuge Liang used his brain to emerge victorious in every battle. Qin Guang previously thought that he was just as quick-witted. Now, he was indeed about to use his brain to achieve his goal. But Qin Guang only wanted to roar at the sky. I said use my brain, not just my head like this. This kind of usage had nothing to do with one's brain. That bastard Zayad, I'll remember you. If I get the chance, I'll definitely cut you into pieces. You must have been a broken-winged angel who had a grudge against me in your past life. Emma, my head is so dizzy, I'm about to faint. That's right, there was indeed a ghost under the concrete cover that Zayad had stepped on earlier. Chapter 305. About 2 minutes ago, before the group of people came out from the abandoned factory, Qin Guang had arrived here through the underwater pipe network. His target was the water collection well. Originally, the broken walls on both sides were not that compact. He had used his fastest speed to move some gravel and cement pillars over, forcefully compressing the space on both sides of the alley. His goal was very simple. He wanted those who wanted to pass through here to pass through the cement cover above his head. In addition, he moved the circular cement cover to a different position. He first pushed it up and then pushed it slightly forward. Under normal circumstances, if someone were to step on the cement cover in this state, the cover would immediately flip over and the person would slide down into the water collection well. No matter how powerful a person was, they would find it hard to react to such an unexpected situation. Not to mention, Qin Guang would add more force when the cover flipped over. That way, he would be able to catch the other party off guard. As long as the other party did not tie Wu Tong up, Qin Guang believed that with this move, he would be able to snatch Wu Tong away in an instant. Once Wu Tong was dragged into the underground pipe network, with the 3D model in his mind, the chances of successfully taking Wu Tong away was as high as 376%. Don't ask me how I calculated this. This is metaphysics and cannot be explained. The plan was perfect. All that was missing was a little sister Wu falling from the sky. But here came the problem. The one who fell down could only be Wu Tong and no one else. Thus, Chen Guang had to place both his legs on both sides of the water collection well. Then, he placed his head and both his hands on the shaking cement cover. He used his head and hands to hold the cover until Wu Tong stepped on it. From his position, he was able to see the person in front through the gap in the cover. It was not difficult to identify Wu Tong from her pants and feet. Everything appeared perfect until Zayad stepped on it twice. The first time, Chen Guang easily held on. However, the sudden impact caused him to be pressed down hard. The hard cement cover slammed into his head, causing pain. Thankfully, he had transformed into a Buddha Knight in advance and accumulated enough bumps on his head. Disregarding everything else, the bumps on his head gave him the ability to resist the impact. It was as if he was wearing a safety helmet. There was a bump on his head, but he didn't panic. It was not until Zayad stepped on him for the second time that Chen Guang was still feeling smug in his heart. Then, he was brutally hit in the head. It was one thing for this damned Middle Eastern bastard to stand on it, but this bastard actually stomped on it. This kick dealt a critical blow to Chen Guang, who nearly fainted from the impact. Monstrous hatred surged in his heart, and he bit the dagger so hard that it almost broke. Even in their wildest dreams, Shurjiu and the others would never have imagined that someone would be able to sneak up on them under their noses. Not only that, the person would have heard their every move clearly and waited here in advance. At this moment, they were mesmerized by the Z-10 in front of them, and their guard was at its lowest. Guys! Let's go. Leave this place. Shurjiu fiercely pushed Wu Tong forward as he spoke. He couldn't help but smile. Wu Tong was pushed forward by Shurjiu. However, her feet were tied up and she could not move forward. She staggered slightly and nearly fell. Wu Tong bit her lips. She was also stunned by the Z-10. The pain, regret, and struggle in her heart were indescribable. When Chen Guang saw this scene through the crack, he gradually calmed down from the rage in his heart. Because he knew that success or failure depended on this. Later on, Zayad, Modelo and I will take this woman and walk in front. Don't rush out of the alley. Remember to be on guard at all times. As long as they don't have the confidence to kill all 7 of us in an instant, they won't act rashly. This woman is really important. Shurjiu pushed Wu Tong again and turned around to speak to the people behind him. The others nodded in unison, thinking that his arrangement was very reasonable. At that moment, Zayad, who was standing beside Shurjiu, suddenly widened his eyes. His mouth gradually fell open and he wanted to shout out loud. However, he held back. F***K. It turned out that when Shurjiu turned around, Wu Tong had finally stepped on the cement cover above Chen Guang's head. Now! Do it! Chen Guang's legs, which were originally standing on both sides of the well, abruptly closed and his entire body began to fall. His head that was on the cement cover slid down rapidly. At the same time, he reached out with both hands to grab the edge of the cover and pulled it down. The cover flipped. Wu Tong was caught off guard and she lost her balance. She subconsciously cried out, "Ah!" Immediately after that, her entire body rapidly fell. At the same time, a hand reached out from below to grab her ankle and pull her down at an even faster speed. Someone is coming to save me? Who is it? As Wu Tong fell, all these thoughts flashed through her mind. She desperately twisted her body and controlled her posture, hoping to completely fall in the shortest amount of time possible. On the other side, when Zayad cursed out loud and slowly raised his gun, Wu Tong's entire body was only left with half of her body. Her long hair was still floating in the air. Everything had happened too quickly and too suddenly. No one could have imagined that someone would be lying in ambush. The moment the hostages stepped onto the concrete slab, Shurjiu was momentarily distracted. Wu Tong, who had been unlucky the whole night, finally got lucky for once. Below, Chen Guang first landed at the bottom of the 2-meter deep well. He spread his arms and prepared to catch Wu Tong, who was falling from above. Behind him was the 50-centimeter high, 60-centimeter wide trench. As long as he could successfully shove Wu Tong in, today's mission would be a success. It was pitch black down there. The other party would definitely not dare to recklessly follow them down. At least, that was what Chen Guang hoped for. Then, in another 30 seconds, he would be able to completely disappear into the complex underground network of pipes. Finally, Wu Tong landed. Chen Guang gently held her in his arms and the dagger in his mouth slid out. With lightning speed, he cut the rope binding her hands. However, it did not hurt her skin at all. Immediately after that, Chen Guang grabbed her by the buttocks and pushed her into the trench behind him. When she was inside, he whispered, "Hurry up and go." Then, Chen Guang shrunk his neck, turned around and dove into the trench. Then, he used the dagger to cut the rope binding her legs. The entire set of movements was as smooth as flowing water. The dagger was so nimble that it became his extra fingers. It was all thanks to the 20 years of experience in using cold weapons on the Sea of Transient. Of course, the strongest pencil sharpening skill in history that he had painstakingly honed in the pencil sharpening world could also be considered as an enhanced skill. When it came to firearms, the difference between Chen Guang and Shurjiu and the others could not be calculated. However, when it came to cold weapons like daggers and swords, Chen Guang could be considered as an absolute expert. Chen Guang. Wu Tong was bent over in the trench. When she heard Chen Guang's voice, she was instantly stunned. Why is it him? Chapter 306. Wu Tong had imagined the scene of someone coming to save her many times. They could be the bodyguards of his father, Wu Shan, who had unique skills. They could also be the top-notch special forces soldiers in the military region of Wujing, who were not well known but were powerful. They could also be their colleagues in the special police force who were not afraid of death. Of course, she knew that these ideas were fantasies. The other party was too strong, and the time left for her people to rescue her was too short. No one could quietly appear here without them noticing. Until she fell into the well, she was completely desperate and didn't expect a savior to come from the sky. But the savior did come. Although it wasn't as invincible and domineering as the one who came from the sky, it sprang out from under her feet like a groundhog. Although it wasn't handsome enough, it was really sudden and effective. But why was it the younger brother who was still angry with her in the afternoon? Wasn't he a college student? Wu Tong really couldn't figure it out, so she was in a daze. Seeing that she didn't move, Chen Guang was anxious. He pushed her round buttocks from behind and squeezed himself into the gutter. Crawl forward. Wu Tong immediately came back to her senses. She would ask him after they escaped. Now was not the time to think about it. She rushed forward. Chen Guang's lips, which were biting the dagger, curled up slightly. He crawled forward and hid his whole body under the gutter. At this time, Chen Guang couldn't help but feel proud. It was really a safe move. The group of grandsons above wouldn't dare to jump down without knowing the situation. Then, he heard a crack behind him, as if something had fallen and smashed into the sole of his foot. Chen Guang bent his neck and looked back. He felt bad. Under the dim moonlight that leaked through the well, he could vaguely see what was lying quietly behind his anus. Damn it. Yes, it was a mini grenade the size of a baby's fist. Under the moonlight, the grenade lay quietly in the shadow, shining with a charming metallic luster. Indeed, they didn't follow him rashly. They just threw down a grenade without hesitation. In this short moment, Chen Guang felt that his thinking speed was faster than the speed of light. He really thought about a lot of things. I'm still a virgin. I'm still so young. I just earned 180 million, and I haven't spent it yet. The worst thing in the world was to be alive but penniless. What was even worse was that the person had died, but the $180 million had not been spent. My father was going to have to send his son off. I didn't become a real rich second generation, nor was I a rich first generation. However, I left my parents a huge inheritance that they wouldn't be able to spend in a few lifetimes. Just thinking about it made him feel miserable. Also, if the grenade were to explode at such a close distance, wouldn't this daisy that I've kept for 20 years blossom? I was an indisputably straight man before I died, but when I died, I became a gay man. The fate of life was truly indescribable in a few words. Also, if I spread out my body, would I be able to block the impact of the grenade's explosion? Wu Tong would be able to survive, right? A saint like me will definitely be able to reincarnate well in my next life, right? Wait, block the impact of the explosion? Logically speaking, I have a pretty good idea. Maybe I can try it. Perhaps it only took 0.5 seconds, but after countless thoughts in his mind took a huge detour around Wujing City's third ring road, he finally found the only chance of survival in this certain death situation. As the saying goes, heaven never seals off one's way. The one was the only chance of survival. Another 0.5 seconds later, his hand was already on the zipper of the sports bag in front of his chest. That's right, the heavenly holy grail inside was the one. Even though Lioli had disconnected and the heavenly holy grail couldn't provide any extra help. However, it was very sturdy. Chen Guang felt that he had never moved so fast before. From the moment he had this idea, to the moment he unzipped the heavenly holy grail, to the moment he twisted off the lid, to the moment he grabbed the mini grenade that was faintly heating up from the ground and threw it into the grail, to the moment he twisted the lid back on. From start to finish, it only took about 5 seconds. Boom! Just as the lid was tightened, a dazzling light shot out from the grail, almost blinding his eyes. At the same time, there was a deafening sound that almost deafened his ears. After that, nothing happened. That's right, there really wasn't any more movement. Nothing had changed. He had survived. Alright, perhaps the heavenly holy grail becoming a little heavier could be considered a change. After all, there was a grenade that had just exploded inside. Other than that, the grail was still ice cold in his hands. There wasn't the slightest bit of heat coming out from it. Double vacuum, extremely strong insulation. I'm kneeling. Only today did I realize that it was truly an invincible divine weapon. A product of the immortal realm. A must-be of the highest quality. Tough and durable. When the light quickly dimmed, Chen Guang gripped the grail tightly and stuffed it back into his bag. Then, he ruthlessly slapped Wu Tong's buttocks, who had a blank look on her face and didn't know what had happened. Hurry up and go. Wu Tong felt that her worldview had collapsed. She had seen grenades before. Although she didn't see them clearly, she could roughly guess what they were just from the sound and light effects. As she quickly crawled forward, she couldn't help but ask, that was a grenade, right? Chen Guang couldn't explain it to her. He could only urge her, I'll explain it to you later. Are you born in the year of the horse? Move a little with a slap. Can we not be a scammer? Can we run faster? Wu Tong's face turned red and she didn't dare to say anything else. She lowered her head and scurried forward. Lower your head. You'll hit your head. The two of them crawled forward for about 5 to 6 meters when Chen Guang suddenly said. Wu Tong asked curiously, how did you know? Chen Guang slapped her buttocks again. The 56 bumps on my head can answer all your questions. At that moment, Wu Tong was not the only one who was shocked. Even Shi Jiao and the others who were standing at the well were completely dumbfounded. The most important hostage had escaped like a rat right under their noses. Zayad, who was the first to notice this, had only considered it for less than 3 seconds before making a decision. He quickly removed the grenade from his waist, pulled the fuse, and tossed it into the well. "I'll blow you up," Zayad roared angrily. Sergio didn't even have time to stop him. He cursed, "Zayad, you idiot." Then, the 7 of them quickly retreated and fell to the ground. Zayad's mini grenade was a fortified version that he had meticulously made himself. Its power was extraordinary. There was no need for the others to point it out. Zayad knew that he had done something stupid. Although he had managed to kill the woman and the person who rescued her, which was quite satisfying, the loss outweighed the gain. Losing the hostage meant that they would no longer be able to safely cross the 20-meter gap to reach the helicopter. Since the other party could appear from the sewers, it meant that there was a way out from here. But now, the passageway was about to collapse. Was there anything more depressing than this? But in reality, the grenade exploded as expected. The sound and visual effects were very powerful, proving that the mini grenade Zayad had made was extraordinary. After that, there was no more movement. The well did not collapse. Not even a wisp of smoke came out from it. The 7 international felons who were lying on the ground raised their necks to look at the well, a look of bewilderment on their faces. Does this mean that our grenade was made with special effects? It's just for show. Chapter 307. Forget it, let's not care about that. With such a loud noise, it's impossible for the Chinese military to not have made a move. We can't go to the helicopter. Without a hostage, even if we get on the helicopter, we will definitely be killed by the explosion. Sergio said loudly. "Mr. Sergio, what should we do?" The muscular black man, Modelo, who had been silent all this while, asked in a low, muffled voice. "Go after them. Since they've snuck over here, we can definitely follow them from below and escape to the outside," Sergio said resolutely. Beside him, Velen muttered, "But no one can guarantee how many people are waiting for us at the exit of the sewers." On the other side, Modelo had already lifted the cement cover and jumped down. Sergio snorted. "That's why we have to move fast. As long as we catch that woman again, even if there are people waiting for us outside, the situation won't be any worse than it is now." "Sure." On the other side, Zayad also jumped down with Modelo. He was really curious as to why there was no reaction from below even though his grenade had clearly exploded. The 7 bandits made a prompt decision, and one by one, they scurried downwards. Waylon, who was the last to fall, was more vigilant. He pulled the well's cover over and covered it tightly. He said to Sergio, who was in front of him, "I have a feeling that there's only one person on the other side." Zayad, who was crawling at the front, shrugged his dog nose. "Velen, you're right. There's only one person." "But?" Sergio asked, "But what?" Zayad pondered for a moment. "There's a very strong smell of blood." "You can even smell that?" Modelo, who was crawling at the front, asked curiously. Zayad grunted. "This is the skill that I, Zayad, am most proud of. There's no mistaking it." The person who saved the policewoman was very terrifying. His hands were stained with blood. Only by killing humans at close range would his hands be stained with such a strong smell of blood. "Modelo, you're the one who has killed the most people here, right? How many people have you killed?" Modelo thought for a moment. "I've killed about 20 to 30 people with a gun. If I've used a knife, maybe 5. Stop talking and be quiet. I can't hear anything in front of me. We'll be in big trouble if we lose him." The third of the 7 couldn't help but interrupt the chatterbox. They didn't know what was going on in front of them, so even if they had a flashlight, they didn't dare to turn it on. Since they were sure that the other party was an expert, they couldn't let their guard down. In this long and narrow tunnel of the sewer network, if the other party found a corner and waited in front of them with a machine gun in hand, no matter how elite the 7 of them were, they would definitely die without a burial ground no matter how strong they were. Of course, Chen Guang knew what was going on behind him. He had hoped that the other party would not dare to follow him for fear of harming the innocent. However, things did not develop in the direction he hoped for. After losing the hostage, it was understandable that they would make a prompt decision to follow him. What bad luck. They're following us. Hurry up. This is my phone. Take it first. Think of a way to contact the people outside. We can't shake them off. Turn on the flashlight and crawl forward. Faster. I'll recite a formula for you. Remember it well. From here forward, 3 left, 2 right, 5 left, 4 right, 3 right, 7 left, 6 right, 4 left, 4 right. Remember this sequence. Then, you'll be able to enter the large pipe that leads to the outside. After you get out, contact the police and troops outside as soon as possible. As Chen Guang spoke, he took out the popcorn 6p from his sports bag and stuffed it into Wu Tong's pants. His fingertips touched the heavenly holy grail, and an idea popped up in his mind. Wu Tong took the phone back. What do you mean? What about you? Chen Guang was silent. They're too fast. I'm afraid we won't be able to shake them off if we work together. Let's split up. You go out first. I'll be responsible for luring them deeper. You bring people back to save me as soon as possible. No. Wu Tong, of course, wouldn't agree to Chen Guang's request. Chen Guang said firmly, we have to do it even if we can't. You're crawling too slowly. The space in this stupid pipe is so narrow. If they catch up, we'll both die. To be precise, if we don't split up and move together, we can probably live for another minute. I don't want to die with you. Wu Tong still insisted. I'm the police officer. I should be the one luring them inside. You go out and find people. Chen Guang was furious. Who the hell has the time to waste with you? Why are you still talking about the police's sense of justice at a time like this? If you say any more nonsense, I'll haunt you even if I die and become a ghost. You want to lure them inside? Just you? Can you stop joking? Do you know the structure of the pipe network? Do you think it's luck that I appeared there to save you? The entire underground pipe network of the 5th and 3rd steel mills is in my head, okay? As long as you get the hell out of here, I can play them to death as much as I want in here alone. Can you not screw me over? Can you not drag me down? Get lost. Wu Tong didn't expect Chen Guang to be so angry. Your sister. The male protagonists in war movies always die because the female protagonists talk too much, okay? They could have escaped unscathed, but because they talk too much, it became a sad movie, okay? Be gentler. Don't worry about me. The underground network is very complicated. As long as you run away, I'll meet up with you in a few minutes. The two of us can go out for a hot pot and come back. These people are still going around in circles. It's much more complicated down there than you think. Have you memorized the formula? I forgot. It's too long. F***CK. In the end, Chen Guang still dawdled a little more. Since his phone was turned on, he simply wrote a notebook on his phone and saved the formula in it. He wasted more than 30 seconds. Then, he pushed Wu Tong fiercely and stuffed her into a maintenance hole next to a small well in the middle. Then, he took out a wet wooden board from the water and slapped it on top of it, completely covering her. He instructed, stay here and don't move. When I lure them away, you can quietly crawl out according to the route written in the notebook. Don't let your phone make any noise, and remember to turn off the screen. I'm leaving first. After that, Chen Guang dived into the depths himself. He only said to Wu Tong from afar, I can climb at least twice as fast as carrying you. Please don't be like the female protagonist in the TV series and make things difficult for me. My goal is to live to the end of the story. Thump thump thump. 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 It couldn't be helped. Blindly pursuing speed, he naturally didn't care about protecting his head. It was good to bump his head all the way. He could treat it as deliberately making noise to lure people towards him. Chapter 308. Fortunately, the 3D map in Chen Guang's mind was obtained in real time. Some places had collapsed to the point that people could not pass through. This was reflected in the 3D model, so he could detect it in advance and avoid it. Otherwise, it would have been a tragedy if he had plunged into a dead end. Wu Tong curled up in a dark corner and listened to the sounds of Shi Jiao and the others crawling past her. She held her breath and felt an indescribable mix of emotions in her heart. Chen Guang's sudden outburst of dominance made her unable to muster up the courage to oppose him. She could only do as he asked in a daze. However, now that he had lured them away, Wu Tong could not help but feel ashamed and regretful. Although his words sounded nice, his actions were actually using his life to cover his retreat. No matter how familiar he was with the terrain, he could not change the fact that there were 7 terrifyingly powerful bandits trailing behind him. He only had a dagger. How could he deal with the 7 of them? Wu Tong desperately suppressed her crazy heartbeat. She was even afraid that the sound of her heartbeat would be heard by the bandits who were leaving. Her heartbeat was so loud that it sounded like thunder in her ears. I always thought you didn't like me at all. I didn't expect you to be willing to die for me. Compared to you, I'm really a terrible police officer and a terrible sister. When the bandits finally left, Wu Tong gently pushed away the wooden plank in front of her. She struggled in pain and quietly walked toward the exit according to the direction Chen Guang had pointed. If Wu Tong had a gun in her hand, she would definitely choose to jump out without hesitation and sneak attack the 7 bandits from behind. Even if she could kill one of them, it would still be good. However, she was unarmed, so she could not die in such a meaningless way. Since Chen Guang had said that he could stall for time, he might be able to escape from another exit. The biggest role she could play was to rush out as soon as possible and contact the people outside as soon as possible. The earlier she could get the people to support her, the earlier she could get Chen Guang out of danger. 4 right. 4 right. Turn right at the 4th bend. It's here. Even Wu Tong was impressed by how Chen Guang managed to memorize such a complicated escape route in his mind. After a few turns, her confidence in Chen Guang grew. At this moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the depths of the network. Boom! A few seconds later, a strong gust of air came from behind, pushing Wu Tong forward and causing her to fall. Her confidence, which had just been ignited, instantly froze. What was going on? What happened? Wu Tong's heart sank to the freezing point in that instant. There was no doubt that Chen Guang did not have any weapons. Such a deafening explosion could only have been caused by the bandits. Wu Tong's mind went blank. She couldn't care less about what Chen Guang had told her just now. She broke into a run and frantically crawled toward the source of the explosion. With such a violent explosion underground, there was no longer a need for him to inform others. The police and the army would respond in time. If Chen Guang is really dead, then I will be buried with him. I can't live alone. Wu Tong thought to herself as she desperately used her hands and feet to move forward. About 30 seconds ago, Chen Guang was stumbling all the way forward. He realized that he had underestimated the other party's capabilities. Although he had used his fastest speed to crawl through the underground pipe network, he still could not shake off the other party. Those people were so difficult to deal with that they were like leeches that had burrowed into the flesh. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before he was caught. If he was shot from behind, even if the old man had a first-generation steel door, he wouldn't be able to withstand the bullets. Listening to the sound of metal colliding with cement coming from the corner behind him, Chen Guang had goosebumps all over his body. I'm panicking. He once thought that his bravery could be compared to the martyrs who blocked the bullet hole, but when the threat of death really approached, Chen Guang sadly found that he was still very afraid of death. Forget it, since I can't escape, then I'll prepare to face it head on. Chen Guang made up his mind and dived into the corner next to him. From here, there was a terrain that he could use to turn the tables. The premise was that if the actual situation in the heavenly Holy Grail was exactly the same as what he imagined. He fiercely stuffed his body into a collapsed gap, using both his hands and feet to push forward. Enduring the burning pain caused by the friction between his stomach and the sharp cement dregs and steel bars, he finally made his way out and dived into the puddle that was half a person's height. Even though he was prepared, he was still blinded by the strong rancid smell in the puddle. The 10-year-old rancid puddle really tasted sour and refreshing. His stomach was accidentally scratched by a steel bar hidden in the cement block. It tore open a wound about a foot long, and fresh blood flowed out. Fortunately, the wound was not deep. It was just that it was soaked in the rancid water, and the pain was as if someone had ruthlessly whipped him. But Chen Guang didn't have time to think about these things. Instead, he immediately stood up and turned around to look at the place he had just come from. At this moment, he was standing in a sealed underground reservoir. About half a meter of the pipe had collapsed from the hole he had just come out from, leaving only a gap that was just big enough for him to squeeze through. Once he came out, he would immediately be in this reservoir. Even with Chen Guang's physique, it was very difficult for him to pass through. The 7 bandits were generally much stronger than him, so it would be even more difficult for them to squeeze through the gap. But Chen Guang couldn't count on this thing to stop them. He wanted to live, but the other party also didn't want to die under the muzzles of the special police and soldiers who were waiting outside. Now that they had fought to this point, no one could back down. Therefore, Chen Guang took out the heavenly Holy Grail and planned to give the other party a good time. The grenade just now had directly exploded in the cup. Relying on the power of the heavenly Holy Grail, the deafening grenade had become a squib. But in fact, it wasn't really a squib. Instead, the power of the entire explosion had been locked inside the cup. Regardless of whether it was the shrapnel that was supposed to fly everywhere or the air current that was engulfed in flames and heat waves, everything was locked inside. Perhaps this cup could be used as a delayed detonation bomb? While hiding at the opening of the sewer, Chen Guang twisted the lid of the cup with all his might. His idea was very simple. This section of the sewer was about 20 meters long. When the first bandit was lying in front of the gap, the other 6 behind him should be lined up neatly like ants. If he opened the cup at this moment and let the impact of the entire explosion be instantly released through the gap, the power would basically be about 80 to 90 times stronger than the grenade just now. It would be enough to make them suffer. In Murong Fu's words, this was called giving them a taste of their own medicine. It was a beautiful idea, but putting it into practice was extremely difficult. That was because the quick-witted Master Guang had forgotten one thing. The F*King lid couldn't be opened at all. The air pressure in the cup was about to break through the sky, and the lid was so tight that it seemed as if it had grown from it. It wasn't something that a human could handle. Ka-cha! Just as he was about to turn into a Spartan, a large black hand suddenly stretched out from the gap and slapped the ground. The sound was like a death knell. Lioli, save me. I'm really going to die. Your savior is going to die. Chapter 309. What are you howling for? Can't you let me sleep peacefully? Can't you let me worry less? How could I be so blind to choose you? Lioli's drowsy voice sounded. Chen Guang was so excited that he was about to cry. He didn't realize how good she was in the past and always felt that this woman liked to slack off. Today, Chen Guang knew that his emperor god would grant her every request. Chen Guang quickly muttered in his heart, "My good Lioli, help me. I can't open this cup. Oh my god. Help me. Oh my god. My hair." Unexpectedly, when Liuli fully manifested, she screamed in a voice even more miserable than Chen Guang's. Chen Guang looked at Liuli's current appearance in his heart and could roughly understand how she was feeling right now. Liuli, who originally had snow-white skin and elegant long hair, had now turned black all over her body. Only her two big eyes that were wide open could be seen. As for her hair, it was in a completely fluffy state. Her black and beautiful long hair was gone and had turned into a curved hair that shot up into the sky. She looked like a certain black basketball player in the NBA who was famous for his afro hair. No, coupled with the fact that she was naked and only covered by 3 clouds, she should be a movie star in an action movie across the sea. Moreover, she was a Black Pearl movie star. The reason why Liuli ended up like this was naturally because the grenade exploded in the cup. Then she discovered something and screamed, "Ah! My computer! My lifeblood! I don't want to live anymore. Little Lightning. Little Lightning, you died so miserably. You've been smashed into powder." The Little Lightning she mentioned was the top-end machine that I saw last time. Chen Guang was puzzled. Why did this happen? Chen Guang. You have to give me a reasonable explanation. Liuli roared. Chen Guang only needed to recall the scene of the grenade explosion in his mind before Liuli immediately understood. She glared at the void with a murderous gaze. "Goodbye, friend. We are no longer friends. Don't. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't do it on purpose. You can't just watch them die." Now that everything was ready, all that was left was to open the cup. "Why don't you help me out a little? I will never forget your great kindness." Get lost. Do you know how much divine power this Empress sacrificed for Little Lightning? For Little Lightning, this old lady hasn't worn clothes for a long time. Do you understand the pain in my heart? Now it was all gone. You just blew it up. I don't even have the motivation to live anymore. Who the hell has the time to care about your life or death? Chen Guang's face darkened. Once Liuli's otaku nature was awakened, she was simply unreasonable. Can you not be like this? If worst comes to worst, I'll just create another Great Perfection Cup world. If the computer is gone, I can just install another one, right? Forget it, this Empress really owes you. To think that the heavenly Holy Grail was one of the 10 great divine weapons of the endless divine world, yet it was actually used by you in such a manner. If you were to find out, you would definitely be filled with so much regret that you would want to slap yourself to death. Forget it, just throw it away. What? I told you to throw the cup over. Remember not to deflect it back. On the other side of the corner, Modelo, who was originally crawling at the front, was called back. The slimmer Xiad swapped to the front and was about to crawl into the gap. At this moment, Chen Guang stretched out his hand and threw the cup at the gap. The cup hit the wall of the sewer and bounced a bit before slipping through the gap and landing in front of Xiad. It rolled around on the ground in front of his chest. F***CK. What is this? Xiad was so scared that he peed his pants. He lowered his head and shone his flashlight at the cup. Then, he laughed. Ha ha ha. That idiot threw a cup back to scare me. Scared me to death. I thought it was a grenade. Yo, it's a Batman knitted cup cover. Seeing that this brother has the same taste as me, I'll give him a quick one later. Modelo, who was behind him, pushed him. Idiot. Hurry up. Are you a chatterbox? At that moment, the idiot Chen Guang that Xiad was referring to had his fingers stuffed into his ears. His mouth was wide open as he leaned against the exit and began counting down in his mind. 3, 2, 1. Boom. That was the sound of the explosion that Wu Tong had heard. Xiad stared blankly at the cup in front of him, which he did not take seriously at all. The cup's lid strangely spun on its own. Maybe a tenth of a second? Perhaps as long as a century. Then, the lid popped out with a bang, and like a cannonball, it hit him hard in the stomach. However, that was just the beginning. Following behind the lid was a scorching stream of air and the shrapnel from the grenade explosion. Those things were the real deal. Earlier, my grenade was not a dud. Did the cup absorb all the power of the explosion? Now, it was releasing it instead. What the hell is this? Which manufacturer made this cup? Before he was engulfed by the heat and shrapnel, that was the only thought left in Zayad's mind. The heavenly Holy Grail lay quietly on the ground. Like a flamethrower, it sprayed out a torrent of iron and shrapnel toward Zayad and the sewer behind him. However, the cup itself completely defied the laws of physics. It was as though it had grown from the ground and was firmly fixed in place. A terrifying stream of air gushed out from the sewer entrance on Chen Guang's left side. Screams and wails rang out one after another within the narrow passageway. The hot stream of iron and shrapnel streaked across the surface of the water before him. White smoke rose from the surface of the water as the hot stream streaked across the surface of the water, causing it to instantly boil. The cement and bricks that had been blocking the entrance of the sewer were also blown away by the terrifying impact and fell into the water that was half a person deep below. Chen Guang could roughly imagine what kind of tragedy was unfolding within the narrow sewer. However, these people were not worthy of his sympathy. After all, if they had the chance, these people would certainly not mind reaping his life. From the moment he decided to rescue Wu Tong, he was destined to fight to the death with these international criminals. The second burst of destructive power from the grenade did not last for long. It quickly came to a complete stop. Chen Guang slowly sat down in the corner of the wall, leaving only his head above the surface of the water. His hand gripped tightly onto his dagger. The terrifying stench of decay accumulated within the reservoir for 10 years kept drilling into his nose. However, Chen Guang's face turned unprecedentedly cold. Victory or defeat will be decided here. There were 7 of them. Although his revolving star transposition had worked wonders, it was impossible for him to kill all of them. Of the 7 of them, the one who fell at the back would definitely not die. There was no point in continuing to run. Even if only one of them had the ability to fight, they would be able to turn him into a sieve with the guns in their hands. Thus, I will deal with them here. Chapter 310. There was no longer any movement from Azure. It was obvious that turning the transcendent Holy Grail into a bomb had exhausted the last of her divine power. Thinking about it, the divine emperor was quite pitiful. She was originally as beautiful as a fairy, but she had been forcefully blown up into a colored version of a female celebrity with an afro hairstyle. She had painstakingly built up a rich machine, but now it had turned into ashes. It was truly a tragedy. As he was letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly heard a clattering sound coming from the sewers behind him. There was movement. As expected, they were not all dead. Chen Guang took a deep breath and clenched the dagger in his hand. His body shrunk downwards, completely submerging into the water. Like a crab, he gently moved a meter to the left and hid right below the sewer exit. One came, one died. Zayad was dead, killed by a grenade he had personally made. What was worse was that he did not understand what had happened even at the moment of his death. If he knew in the underworld, perhaps he would not be able to rest in peace. That is, if he still had eyes. Third in line, Sergio's luck was pretty good. His thinner physique allowed him to practically hide his entire body behind Zayad and Modelo, who was in front of him. Zayad was riddled with holes from the burst of shrapnel, while Sergio himself was only rolled by the hot current. In fact, it was quite miserable, like a roast duck that was half roasted over the fire in a roast duck restaurant. But at least he managed to keep his life. Modelo, who was in front of Sergio, was a little more unlucky. A shrapnel the size of a fingernail flew in front of him and hit him in the eye. His death was too tragic to look at. The other 3 and the white man, Velen, were in a slightly better state. Although their clothes were mostly burnt and more than 50% of their bodies were severely burned, they were still lucky to be alive in such a situation. As expected of the internationally renowned bandits. Even though they were in such a terrible situation, after withstanding the first wave of impact, even though their bodies were in so much pain that they wanted to strangle themselves, they still clenched their teeth and did not let out a single scream. The other party was more difficult to deal with than they had imagined. They were also vicious and merciless, and they even had an inexplicable weapon. This group of battle-hardened bandits did not dare to be careless. No one spoke, but everyone, including Sergio, felt a great pressure. If not for the severe burns all over his body, Sergio felt that he would be covered in cold sweat. Before this, Zayad had mentioned that this man's hands were stained with blood. Now, it seemed that he had still underestimated him. The destructive power of such a terrifying weapon in the sewers was simply on the level of destruction. It was unknown how he managed to get it. Before the two of them had even truly clashed, he had already been severely injured by him. Even though the people present were international bandits who had killed countless people, they had rarely encountered such a terrifying enemy. However, there was not much time left for them to hesitate. The Chinese soldiers could appear at any time. By that time, they would really be trapped. In that case, he could only move forward. As long as they could capture that woman and kill that expert, the worst that could happen to them would be that the situation would revert back to how it was before. Wu Tong crawled forward frantically in the sewers. Her fingernails had already been turned over, and her head was also bleeding from the impact, but she didn't feel any pain at all. Chen Guang. You can't die. Wait for me. Wait for me. Even though she didn't know what she could do by rushing over, even though she knew that she might be walking right into a trap. Even though she understood everything, Wu Tong still couldn't change the fact that she wanted to rush to his side. From the moment Chen Guang lured everyone away, Wu Tong completely understood the deepest and truest thoughts in her heart. If she could use her life to save him, she would not hesitate, no matter how slim the chances were, even if it was a pointless death. If he really died for her today, she would avenge him even if she had to perish together with him. You want me to turn around and leave like a coward? No way. I'm the police. You're just my college student brother. Dying on the battlefield is the fate of the police. College students should just hide in their ivory towers. Bam! Wu Tong bumped into the wall again. She saw stars, and blood flowed down from her head. The blood flowed past her eyelids and dyed her vision red. Wu Tong wiped away the blood in front of her eyes. She huffed and puffed through her nose. She shook her dizzy head and continued to move forward. Chen Guang waited in the water for about 30 seconds. He couldn't breathe, but his experience in the Sea of Moments had made him much better at holding his breath underwater. A mere 30 seconds was nothing to him. Finally, a stone fell from above, splashed in the water, and hit him on the forehead. Chen Guang knew that someone had come out from above. He gripped the dagger tightly in his right hand and slowly raised it. His face was completely parallel to the surface of the water. Chen Guang's face slowly approached the surface of the water like a ghost. The first person to emerge wasn't Sergio, but a brown-skinned mixed-blood man. His movements were very slow, because every movement brought great pain to the burned parts of his body. He was already burned beyond recognition, and he could barely open his eyes. He carefully reached out with his hand. His body slid across the exposed steel bars. The rubble that had piled up in the tunnel was all gone. Only the steel bars were left. The steel bars pulled at his burnt and crisp skin. Blood and flesh intertwined, but he didn't feel any pain because his entire body was in extreme pain. Even so, his strong desire to live pushed him forward. His instinct as a fierce bandit made him grip the gun in his hand tightly. There was a small hole in front of him. He heard the sound of the stone falling into the water. Was there a pool in front? The man thought to himself. Then, he slowly poked his head out. Immediately after, he felt a cold sensation on his neck. Then, his mouth was covered by someone. Chen Guang was facing upwards. He allowed the man's hot blood to splash on his face, but he couldn't bear to blink. The right hand holding the dagger was pulling the man's hair, pulling his head down. His left hand was covering the man's mouth. The man opened his mouth fiercely and tried to bite Chen Guang's hand with his teeth. His body began to struggle like a worm. However, the blood on his neck flowed too quickly. His head quickly sank, and his consciousness gradually fell into darkness. Chen Guang's lightning-fast and ruthless knife found the man's weakest spot in the darkness and completely destroyed his neck. Chen Guang didn't know how deep he had cut, but it was at least 3 inches. The man's struggle became weaker and weaker. Gradually, he stopped breathing. Chen Guang dragged the man forward with both hands. The person inside seemed to be impatient and pushed him. Finally, the man's entire body fell. Chen Guang, who had sunk into the water again, took advantage of the situation and gently sent the man to the side. He then returned to the exit. At that moment, Chen Guang was very surprised. He thought that he would be very flustered and nervous since it was his first time killing someone in real life. However, that was not the case. Chapter 311. He discovered that he was terrifyingly calm, without any ripples, as if he wasn't cutting someone's throat, but a piece of rag. This kind of thing was done with incomparable proficiency. The blade was precise, the force exerted was perfect, silently taking a person's life, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. When someone else's hot blood splashed on his face, his mind was thinking, is it exactly the same as the taste in the sea of moments? Chen Guang secretly laughed bitterly, regardless of whether he admitted it or not. The 20 years he spent on the Royal had left a seed of a cold-blooded executioner in his heart. No matter how much he kept reminding himself that it was just a game, that it must be a game if he could revive, it was of no use. This game was too realistic, day after day of boarding the ship and killing, stabbing the blade into the body of others, watching the blood of others blossom into blooming flowers. No matter how much Chen Guang flaunted himself as a good youth of the new era, he couldn't help but become numb to life. It had been many days since he left the Sea of Moments. When he came out, he gave Bai Nyangzi a big fright, but as time passed, Chen Guang gradually returned to the feeling of reality, allowing the smell of blood in the Sea of Moments to wash away. Until today, when he started killing again. Chen Guang would never admit that he was a bloodthirsty person. He only wanted to be a happy youth. The reason why he became like this was probably because from the beginning, he believed that the other party deserved to die, right? I'm not bloodthirsty. I'm just numb. He lied to himself like this. While letting his imagination run wild, he mechanically repeated the same old trick. Another person was killed. Human blood was truly a poisonous thing. Constantly smearing it on the face, pouring it into the nose and mouth, it would gradually numb the mind like alcohol. The third person's injuries were slightly lighter than the first two. He almost cried out. Fortunately, Chen Guang dragged him into the water in time. This person flopped in the water for a few seconds, but in the end, he still couldn't escape the fate of death. But his abnormal movements greatly alerted the white man Villain, who was at the back. Chen Guang also knew that something was wrong, so he quickly and quietly moved to the side. As soon as he took 2 steps forward, a gun popped out from the entrance of the passageway and fired 3 shots at the position he had just been standing at. Chen Guang broke out in a cold sweat. The bullet closest to him brushed past his ear and almost drilled into his brain. David? Guy? Sinisa? What's going on up ahead? Answer me. Villain called out the names of the 3 people in front of him, but no one answered him, because all 3 of them were dead. After waiting for another 10 seconds, Villain didn't dare to move. He didn't need the other 3 to answer him, because he could already smell the stench of blood in the air. Damn it! Villain cursed in a low voice as he stealthily took a few steps back. He gripped his gun tightly in one hand and grabbed his honey badger with the other. The sound of flowing water could be heard coming from the reservoir up ahead. In the silence of the underground, it was particularly eerie. Villain panted heavily. In his 30-plus years as a semi-professional soldier, he had never been as nervous as he was right now. It was as if he could lose his life in the next second. At this moment, he knew that someone was waiting for him up ahead. The three of them had died without a sound, without even the slightest bit of struggle. Because of that strange flamethrower, the 7 of them had suffered heavy losses. But even so, it didn't change the fact that the other 3 were battle-hardened top-notch soldiers. And yet, they didn't even let out a scream before they died. Velan ruthlessly stomped on the already dead Zayad. He wanted nothing more than to crush his head. This guy over there is much more powerful than what you said. At this moment, the sound of tremors came from above him. It was the footsteps of the Chinese military and police. Velan knew that he didn't have much time to hesitate. The Chinese military was trying to find a way to get here. Now that he was seriously injured, if he were to fall into the hands of the Chinese military, it would be better to die than to live. But he didn't want to die. So, he had no other choice. Even if the darkness ahead was like a ferocious beast, he could only resolutely charge forward. Bastard! I'll fight you to the death. Velan abruptly switched on the tactical flashlight strapped to his waist. With a twist of his waist, he fiercely leapt forward. With the honey badger in his right hand, the muzzle of the honey badger sprayed out a blinding flash as he flew through the air. Tut 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 tut. The dense barrage of bullets carried Velan's strong will to live. It viciously vented out, forming a ring around him. Velan steadily landed on the ground, his left hand tightly gripping the pistol. His blood-red eyes scanned his surroundings as he panted heavily. There was no movement at all. Only the dripping sound of water could be heard from a distance in the huge reservoir. The tactical flashlight illuminated the situation in the reservoir. Velan saw David, Guy, and Sinisa floating on the water with their backs up and faces down. They were in 2 different corners of the reservoir. Dark red blood gradually spread out from the bodies of these 3 people, dyeing the muddy, stinky water a brownish-red color. Velan frantically looked around. Where are they? Come on. Bastard. Before he could finish speaking, a long dagger ruthlessly stabbed into his heart from his back. Wayland screamed in despair. He jerked his head back and pulled the trigger again, but it was empty air. The person who stabbed the dagger into his back disappeared again. Qin Guang crouched in the water. For the first time, he felt that this filthy, rancid, decade-old wine was so cute. If it wasn't for the fact that this baby had no visibility, he would have taken a picture of that bastard without any explanation. But Qin Guang's luck was finally running out. Velan frantically sprayed his bullets before dying. Finally, a bullet pierced through the water and hit his shoulder. Qin Guang groaned. He spat out a lot of air and gulped down another mouthful of dirty water. But this still wasn't the worst situation. What was worse was that Velan suddenly saw bubbles rising from the water. He aimed the honey badger in that direction. Blood kept gushing out of his mouth, but a smug look appeared on his face. Ha ha ha. Bastard, I've caught you. Qin Guang's hair stood on end. This is bad. Velan pulled the trigger. Click, click. The honey badger ran out of bullets. No, Velan closed his eyes in despair. His consciousness gradually blurred, and he slowly knelt down. Dead. Qin Guang, who had just escaped death, stood up from the water, panting heavily. There was a bloody hole in his shoulder. The bullet had pierced through and tore out a large piece of flesh. Fortunately, it missed by a centimeter and didn't injure his bones. Qin Guang leaned against the wall of the reservoir. He couldn't hide the smugness on his face. I'm finally a man with a bullet hole in my body. I survived. Just then, a beam of light came from the sewer exit. A man whose face was beyond recognition was lying on the ground, looking like a devil. His face was covered in horrifying red pieces of flesh. He narrowed his eyes and looked at him coldly. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He held a flashlight in his left hand and a gun in his right. He said in standard Mandarin, "I've caught you." Among the survivors, Nineth suffered the heaviest injuries. From the beginning, he chose to lie on the ground and feign death. It was only when Velan lured Chen Guang out that he finally poked his head out. Chapter 312. Chen Guang swore that this would be the last time in his life that he would show off in poverty. Of course, it wasn't his fault. If he hadn't been shot in the shoulder by Welan and accidentally spat out the air he had been holding in, he definitely wouldn't have floated up to the surface so easily. It was too late to say anything now. Large beads of cold sweat instantly covered his back. Chen Guang regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. I should have thought of this earlier. According to the usual style of television dramas and movies, even the villains wouldn't die so quickly. There would definitely be a villain who would suddenly jump out just as the male lead was about to succeed, forcefully turning the perfect ending into a bitter one. Damn it. Am I getting my comeuppance? In the past, I would always complain about how other people acted in movies, saying that their directing skills were bad, that they lacked creativity, and that they didn't have any brains. But I never thought that the same thing would happen to me. Faced with this situation, it was clear that there was no hope for Liuli. Chen Guang's mind raced as he racked his brains for a way to survive. No matter how he thought about it, he was helpless. At such a close distance, and with the other party being a well-trained terrorist, it was impossible for him to miss. Bro, you guys want to live, but I don't want to die either. How about this? I'll tell you how to leave this place, and we'll pretend that we never met. How about that? We're all Chinese, and we don't fight each other. From the beginning to the end, it was just an accident. This is a misunderstanding. He wanted to see if he could stall for time. Logically speaking, this bro had just been barbecued inside, so he definitely wasn't in a good state. Who knew? He might be able to make him fall asleep just by chatting with him. But Shi Jiao immediately slapped Chen Guang in the face. He forced himself up, but his right hand that was holding onto the gun was extremely stable the entire time. The muzzle was pointed straight at Chen Guang's head. Do you think I'll believe you? Chen Guang secretly rolled his eyes. If you really didn't believe me, you should have just shot me, alright? There was no hope of making him fall asleep from chatting, but it seemed like he could stall for time. Then, Shi Jiao stood up straight in front of him and went into the water. He narrowed his eyes and approached Chen Guang step by step. I know what you're thinking. Are you trying to stall for time? Bang! He fired. The bullet accurately hit Chen Guang's other shoulder. Like before, it didn't hurt his bones, but passed through the muscles of his shoulder. A tearing pain came. Chen Guang fell backward and hit his head on the wall of the reservoir. Shi Jiao walked closer until the cold muzzle of the gun was pressed against Chen Guang's forehead. I admit that you're very powerful, but you're not powerful enough. Lead the way. As long as I can survive, I'll let you go. I mean what I say. Chen Guang trembled in pain. Big brother, can we talk nicely and not shoot? You're an expert, so I have to show you enough respect. If I don't, I won't feel safe. You killed all my companions. I can't just sit back and do nothing, can I? Shi Jiao moved his face closer to Chen Guang. Do you see my face? It's all thanks to you that I've become like this. If you don't want to die, you'd better cooperate. F***CK. His face was horrible. All the flesh was rotten, and his eyelids were completely swollen. He looked like a mutant that had failed to shed its skin. Chen Guang gritted his teeth and stood up. Bro, don't worry about your appearance. As long as you have a beautiful heart, you'll find true love sooner or later. I know a very skilled Korean doctor. He can make you as handsome as Do Min Jun. Cut the crap. Lead the way. I'll blow your head off if you say another word. Shi Jiao suddenly roared. Letting out a sigh in his heart, Chen Guang obediently walked towards the other exit. Why are people so hot-tempered now? Brother, don't accidentally fire. I'm not bragging, but my father is a lieutenant general, and he's about to be promoted to general. As long as you hold me hostage, no one will dare to fire. Lieutenant General? Shurjiu believed his nonsense. Of course. Our Chen family is a military family. My brother's code name is Dragon Fang. He's the top special forces soldier in Huaxia. It's not difficult for him to wipe out a small country with 300 Dragon Fang soldiers under his command. What I have is just a superficial knowledge that my brother taught me. In a few years, when my father enters the command center, he'll play an important role in the Huaxia military for the next few decades. Besides my biological brother, I still have my cousin, uncles, and uncles. No matter what you want to do, as long as you have me as a hostage, I can guarantee that everything you want will come true. The policewoman you caught just now is actually my fiancée. Her father's name is Wushan. Otherwise, why would I get involved in this matter? Wushan. Shurjiu had done a lot of homework. He immediately understood when Chen Guang mentioned the name Wushan. That's right. That's why the military gave you the helicopter without a second thought. There's a lot going on in this matter. As Chen Guang spoke, he gently lay down on the manhole in front of him. He had no choice. Both of his hands had been shot in the shoulders, so he could not exert any strength at all. Interesting. Looks like the other 6 people's deaths were worth it. Shurjiu's terrible mood instantly turned for the better. Actually, you're really strong. It's a pity that you met me. That's right. Unlucky. Otherwise, I think we could be friends. I think you and I are the same type of person. Bang! Shurjiu, who was standing behind Chen Guang, felt his head explode. At the previous exit, Wu Tong slowly lowered Ziyad's sniper rifle. Chen Guang was so frightened by the gunshot that he peed his pants. He subconsciously shrank back, thinking that the guy behind him was tired of his talkative nature and fired again. He waited for a long time, but there was no movement. When he turned around, he saw Shurjiu's headless corpse. Not far away, a soft call came from another hole. Chen Guang. Old Master Guang's entire body went limp. Oh my God, I survived. Thank God. The saying that the villain dies because he talks too much is indeed stronger than the saying that the hero must die. I won the bet. Sis, you weren't so obedient to abandon me and run. You're too considerate. Although, deep down, I didn't want you to come back and drag me down. But if you saved my life instead, that would be a different story. Thank God, you're back. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm still alive. He forced himself to straighten his body and leaned against the entrance of the sewer. He subconsciously wanted to give Wu Tong a thumbs up, but he found that he could not lift his hand. Wu Tong was in a half-crouch. The sniper rifle in her hand was so hot that it looked as though it had just been fished out of boiling water. However, her hand was unprecedentedly steady. She continued to aim at Shurjiu, as though she was worried that this man who could not be any more dead would still be able to rise up and give Chen Guang a fatal blow. Then, she finally heard Chen Guang speak. She saw him sit up bit by bit. His previously stopped breathing resumed and his frozen heart came to life once more. She tossed the sniper rifle away and jumped into the water. Using her hands and feet, she threw herself in front of Chen Guang, hugged him and cried. It's great that you're fine. Really. I knew I should have come back. I didn't become a deserter, big sis, I was originally fine. If you hadn't let go, I feel like I'm really going to become disabled. Chapter 313. Wu Tong was so frightened that she quickly let go and snatched the flashlight from Shurjiu's hand. Then, she kicked the corpse to the ground and shone it on Chen Guang's body. She burst into tears again. Your hand. Oh my God. If you become a cripple, can you not say such depressing things? As a veteran, how can I live without my hands? I can definitely heal it. Don't curse me. I was only shot in the shoulder. I've seen people survive after being shot in the neck. Wu Tong wiped away the tears and blood on her face. She looked confused. Veteran? Just leave. We're not from the same world. We don't have anything in common. Chen Guang spent about 3 minutes comforting Wu Tong. It was a pain in the ass. He was the one who was shot, and she was the uniformed police officer. In the end, he, the victim, had to comfort the police officer. No. Absolutely not. You were the one who killed these criminals. I was just a burden. How can I take the credit? Chen Guang wanted to let Wu Tong take the credit for killing these international criminals, but he did not expect her to reject him. He put on a straight face. Sis, can you not make things difficult for me? It's hard enough to work so hard to save a person, okay? I'm just a student, a cute college student. Now, you want me to jump out and tell others that this cute college student just killed 6 vicious bandits with his own hands? Cut their throats? What will others think of me? Will I still be able to live a peaceful life in the future? But Wu Tong felt extremely ashamed. She had been feeling terrible since the beginning of the day. Now that she was being asked to falsely claim credit, she could not get over it. An ordinary person killed 6 people for no reason. Maybe this person will be blamed on me in the end. Even if these people were criminals with blood on their hands, I won't be able to explain it. You're a police officer. You fought with the criminals and killed them. That's normal, okay? But no one will believe me. Wu Tong was still persistent. It doesn't matter if other people believe it or not. In any case, you and I are both dead set on it. There's no third person who can jump out and say that you're bragging. Come on, if you really feel guilty and apologetic, and want to express your gratitude to the old man for saving your life. Chen Guang pondered. Wu Tong's breathing stagnated. She thought to herself, if he wants me to repay him with my body, even though I'm not mentally prepared yet, and even though I'm 5 years older than him, I'll still agree. She couldn't find another man like him in this world who was willing to die for her. As long as I become a family with him, his contributions will also be my contributions. If I get promoted because of this, it will also be his achievement. We will have a family. I can marry him and have children. I can raise him. Chen Guang continued, then you can. Wu Tong's breathing quickened. You can give me money. Good. What? Wu Tong was dumbfounded. At the same time, Chen Guang also felt embarrassed. He's used to being poor and had forgotten that he's a tycoon with 180 million yen. Hence, he subconsciously said such embarrassing words. It's just a joke. Anyway, don't argue with me. It's decided. How do you want to repay me? We can talk about it in private later. Later, you must remember to keep a straight face and insist that you're pretending to be weak. You purposely fell into the enemy's hands and then counterattacked and killed all the criminals in one fell swoop. As Chen Guang spoke, he forced himself to stand up straight and walked toward the sewer entrance. What are you doing? Wu Tong followed him. Helping me find something. My cup. Cup. A fiberglass cup. Wu Tong was anxious. Look at the time. Why do you still care about the cup? Chen Guang rolled his eyes. You don't understand. I can't explain it to you. This cup is my favorite. About 2 minutes later, Wu Tong finally understood what Chen Guang meant. She put the heavenly holy grail into the sports bag in front of his chest with a strange expression. She couldn't bear to look at the glossy and colorful picture on the cup. She didn't expect Chen Guang's favorite cup to be this kind of cup. But she didn't know what happened. The most important part of the beautiful picture was foggy. She thought it was dust, but she couldn't wipe it off even after rubbing it with her fingers several times. Even if you like to look at these, you should at least look at domestic ones. What's so good about black ones? And the hairstyle is so terrible. It's even an afro. It's so ugly. Wu Tong pulled the zipper of her bag and rolled her eyes at him. Chen Guang thought to himself, thank God Liuli had disconnected at this time. Otherwise, if she heard Wu Tong's complaints, would she give her a super hypnosis? Next time, he should choose a fireproof cover. It was a little embarrassing for it to be burned. There was another thing that Chen Guang was particularly concerned about. Up until now, the Heavenly Holy Grail hadn't sent him a notification telling him that the punishment realm had ended. It didn't seem to be over yet. Also, why did his chest feel so hot? That didn't make sense. There clearly wasn't any heat at the start. Why did it suddenly heat up? Does it mean that my Heavenly Holy Grail has a self-heating function? All of a sudden, it seemed to have become so lofty. It could swallow grenades and eat bombs when entering, and it could heat up its own coffee when retreating. Little did Chen Guang know that the moment he pulled up the zipper of his bag, the Heavenly Holy Grail flashed 7 times in a row. It was the same as when he raced over 100 meters and killed a pigeon. The two of them curled up in the sewers and waited for about 10 minutes. Finally, the cover above their heads was lifted, and the Special Forces soldiers entered one by one. They saw Chen Guang and Wu Tong sitting together. In an instant, several black muzzles were aimed at Chen Guang. Without any hesitation, Wu Tong stood before Chen Guang and yelled, "What are you guys doing? The criminals have all been killed. This is the good citizen Chen Guang who acted bravely for a just cause. With his help, I killed the 7 criminals one after another. Chen Guang is seriously injured. Call an ambulance." When she said this, Wu Tong's face was a little red. However, the two of them had already agreed on it. Even though she knew that everyone would think that she was lying, she gritted her teeth and held on. What could be used to describe the feelings of these special forces? Simply put, it was 3 words, King dog. Normal people wouldn't believe a single word that Wu Tong said. Your good citizen is really everywhere. Did he come to the underground to act bravely for a just cause? Even if he was lying through his teeth, he still had to follow the basic rules. Later on, Wu Shan came, and his colleagues from the Wenxing branch also came one after another. Wu Shan knew Chen Guang, and so did the other people from the Wenxing branch. Chen Guang took out his wet student ID to prove his identity. No matter what, Wu Tong insisted that the 7 criminals died in her hands, and that Chen Guang had mysteriously appeared here. Chapter 314. Of course, Wu Shan knew that there was something fishy going on. However, since his daughter insisted on it, he would not ask further. He knew that it was useless to ask. At that moment, Wu Shan was immersed in self-blame. Although Wu Tong had miraculously survived, Wu Shan could not forgive himself for making such a decision. Even though he knew that even if he was given another chance to choose, he probably wouldn't change his mind. The special police wanted to take Chen Guang away for questioning, but Wu Shan came to the rescue. Let's leave it at that. There's nothing to investigate. Since he's injured, let him go to the hospital first. If you have any other questions, you can ask Wu Tong and me. Wu Tong, who had escaped death, was furious. Although she felt embarrassed that she had falsely claimed the merit, when the truth was revealed, Chen Guang had almost been taken away to be interrogated even though he had not done anything. If others knew that it was Chen Guang who had killed 6 people, things would be even more troublesome. She held on to Chen Guang's hand tightly and protected his stretcher. She yelled at the special police captain, "Captain Gu, what are you guys thinking? So many people know him. He was shot twice to cover me when I killed the criminals, and now you're telling me that you want to take him away? You won't even let him go to the hospital?" Captain Gu was also extremely embarrassed. However, since the father and daughter of the Wu family had made a decision, he could not continue to pester them. Thus, he left dejectedly. Of course, he also had other things to do. He had won a great victory in the pursuit of Sergio's group, but the other group had escaped. Now, the special police system of the entire Wujing city was alarmed. Captain Gu and his team were still busy today. They would probably have to join in the overnight pursuit. As for the military, they had left as soon as the incident was over. The police would have to deal with the aftermath. Fortunately, the group of people who had bumped into Chen Guang in town did not come over. Otherwise, the fat police officer might have become one of the only 3 people who knew about the incident. However, he would find out about it later. By then, he would probably only be a legend in his heart. Perhaps he would think that he was worthy of being the man that Captain Wu had taken a liking to. It was fine when he did not make a move, but when he did, it was like a clap of thunder. He first inquired about the situation, then silently rushed over and rescued the Wu team from a situation of certain death without a single injury. Relying on the fact that they were acquaintances and Wu Tong's superior, Chief Ding moved closer to Chen Guang. "Little Chen, how did a good citizen like you end up there?" Chen Guang knew that the bureau chief was just being curious. Of course, it could also be someone else's order. He rolled his eyes and said, "I don't know either. I have the habit of sleepwalking since I was young. When I sleepwalk, I like to crawl into holes. When I wake up, I'm already lying there with 2 bloody holes on my shoulder. How unlucky." Chen Guang's ability to act shamelessly was much higher than Wu Tong's. With a bitter face, Chief Ding could not do anything to him. "When we arrive at the hospital, you can rest first. I'll go to the municipal bureau for a meeting." Wu Tong sat next to Chen Guang's stretcher in the ambulance. 2 nurses were tying gauze on the head of the anti-terrorist hero. She had also hit her head hard. Chen Guang shook his head. "Meeting my ass. You can't go anywhere tonight. You have to be wherever I am. Give me your hand." The punishment realm had not ended yet. Chen Guang was determined to endure it. Although his shoulder was really weak, he could still move his fingers. Wu Tong's face turned red. She did not understand what he meant, but she obediently put her hand in his palm. Chen Guang squeezed her hand tightly. "I'm injured now. I'm very fragile and may have a mental breakdown at any time. If you have a conscience, let me hold your hand." "Oh, okay." Wu Tong's face turned even redder. The nurses on both sides covered their mouths and snickered. They had never seen a guy who was still in the mood to flirt with a girl when he was so injured. Sensing the sky-piercing Holy Grail's power spreading to Wu Tong and enveloping her, Chen Guang's heart was finally relieved and he glanced at the 2 nurses. "Oh my God, what a pretty little girl. Did she just graduate from the nursing school?" "Excuse me, Officer Wu and I are just siblings. If it's possible, can we exchange phone numbers? Although I've been shot twice, I'm actually a 5-merit student of Gokyo University. I'm an outstanding student this year and the winner of the annual scholarship." "Shut up. You're seriously injured." Wu Tong and the 2 nurses rebuked him together. "I won't leave the front line if I'm lightly injured, and I'll chase after girls day and night." Chen Guang continued to insist. Seeing that the 3 of them were about to lose their temper, Chen Guang immediately changed his words. "By the way, which hospital is the ambulance going to?" "Wujing City Hospital." "What's wrong?" The beautiful nurse was finally willing to answer. Chen Guang straightened his body on the stretcher. "No. We can't go to Wujing City Hospital." The 3 of them hurriedly pressed him down again. "You'd better behave yourself. It's not about whether I'm being honest or not. My parents are both in Wujing City Hospital. My mother just had her surgery a few days ago. If she knew that I was shot, how scared would she be?" Chen Guang was anxious. Under his insistence, they finally switched to another hospital. On the other side, World 8 was looking at the special communication device in his hand with a grave expression. He had been waiting for a long time with his finger pressed on it, but there was no movement. Finally, he threw the communication device away and said coldly, Sergio is dead. They should all be dead. Are we going to avenge them? World H shook his head. It's more important to complete the mission first. I don't care about other people's deaths. We, the Shattered World, will handle Sergio's death ourselves. There's no need for you to worry. The group entered the forest and disappeared into the darkness. There wasn't any shrapnel in Qinguang's shoulder, since the bullet had pierced through it. The so-called treatment was just some disinfection and bandaging, along with some medicine to increase the vitality of his cells and also some medication. Qinguang's luck was off the charts. He didn't hurt his bones or tendons. It was simply a blessing from the gods. On the other hand, Wu Tong's injuries were much simpler. Initially, she didn't have to be hospitalized, but Qinguang didn't allow her to leave. Hence, the two of them were allocated 2 beds in the hospital and laid down side by side, holding hands. When the organization asks me how I did it, how do you think I should explain it? Wu Tong asked awkwardly as she lay on the bed. Qinguang rolled his eyes. Police? Don't you know how to talk nonsense? Just now, Chief Ding asked me why I was there. I told him that I sleepwalked there, but he couldn't even fart. You should learn from me. Have you seen the anti-Japanese drama? A delicate young girl was kissed by the Japanese, and then she exploded and went on a rampage. Just follow this train of thought and say that you saw a handsome young man like me getting shot. You also know me, so you were stimulated and your little universe exploded. Then, your mind went blank, and when you came back to your senses, the bandits were already dead. Wu Tong was defeated by his shamelessness. Will others believe such an explanation? So what if they don't believe me? Anyway, there's no evidence, and there's no recording at the scene. Everyone else is dead, so we can say whatever we want. Qinguang, on the other hand, saw through everything. Wu Tong nodded. That's true. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.